All set.
Great, thank you, Katie. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a joint meeting of the Advisory Committee and the Board of Selectmen, October 7th, 2021. It is a Zoom meeting. I will call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 7:05. All members are present. Ms. Cook?
So I will call the Advisory Committee meeting to order at I'm on different times, on 7:06 p.m. We've got 5 members present. Tim Martell and Adam Noniff are not here.
Okay, great, Kathy. So you had on your agenda approved minutes from 9:15. Oh, someone is saying they're in the waiting room, Kathy. Michelle Tate. Could that be? I don't know who that is.
I don't know
Okay.
who it is either.
Okay. We'll let them.
I'm getting texted by someone. I don't know who it is. Let's see.
I think that might be Adam.
That's what I'm wondering. Adam, is that you? If so, can you raise your hand? Yep, it is. It's Adam. Can we bring Adam over under Michelle Tate? So while we're doing that, Kathy, for your minutes from 9:15:21, are you going to move forward, or are you going to table that item?
We're going to table. Claire is not here. She's gone to EDC, so we will table.
Okay. Before we get to the scheduled appointments on the Board of Selectmen, we're going to take just a second and move up under other matters, consideration of amendment to fire chief contract. We did not hear back from legal counsel, so I would ask the board to table this until our next scheduled meeting. Are we good with that, Andrew, Sam?
Yep.
Okay, Chelsea. Okay, Marty,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're there.
I'm here and I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll table that and we can let the chief know that he doesn't have to hang around for the whole meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, the purpose of the joint meeting today was to allow presenters to come and discuss and present to advisory, as well as the Board of Selectmen on some of these articles that we haven't had an opportunity to hear about. So what we had done is we're going to go out of order within the warrant itself, just to kind of save time. If we could bring Mr. Haggerty over, that would be appreciated. That way he doesn't have to hang around till the end of the night. So just for advisory and Board of Selectmen members know, we're going to do Articles 7, 8, and 9 on the warrant. So if we could bring Mr. Haggerty over.
For advisory members, the warrant is on your town email. Mark sent that, I think either yesterday or the day before. So if you want to follow along, it's on your town email.
And Kathy, did we ever take a position on these?
No.
Chelsea, I think, Chelsea's kind enough that's going to share her screen tonight. Do you have the warrant? Kathy, we'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah, Kate, can you just, oh, you gave it to me. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Haggard. If you can just hold on 2 seconds, we're going to put your warrant articles up on the screen and we will turn the floor over to you.
Everyone see my screen?
Yes, and thank you, Chelsea, for doing that.
You're welcome. You said 7, 8, and 9, right?
7, 8, and 9. Yep. All right, Mr. Haggerty, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Jim. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Article 7 is just housekeeping. Town meeting notices, the warrants have to be posted 7 days before a regular town meeting, annual town meeting, and 14 before special. When we changed the language a couple of years ago, we omitted that off the bottom. This is just to bring us in compliance with the state law. It's just really housekeeping. There's nothing exotic about number 7. Number 8, Article 8 gives the selectmen the option to direct that a town meeting be held in another town contiguous to Southborough. Although there was some authority granted under the emergency legislation last year related to COVID, it didn't make it a permanent item. And there's no particular reason for this, but this is a classic example with the special meeting we have now. If we had had this article in place, this is part of the code, the selectmen had an option perhaps to hold the special town meeting at Algonquin in the much larger auditorium or in the gym. It just gives another option to the selectmen if for whatever reason they are unable to hold a meeting here in Southborough. And finally, number 3, Article number 9 just cleans up some conflicting stuff in the code about posting stuff. We were required to post notices of the annual meeting in a newspaper, which doesn't make a lot of sense today, but also to have place copies of the annual report literally in physical places attached to the library wall and the transfer station, stuff like that. It just cleaned this up a bit. So we continue to post, says the select will make the annual report available 7 days before the meeting by putting on the website of the townhouse, and it just cleans it up. Nothing, no real significant changes here.
All right, thank you, Jim. Kathy, we'll go to advisory first. We've seen, we haven't been presented with these articles, but we'll go through advisory first on these ones, Kathy, to see if there's any questions or comments.
Okay, I need to correct what I just said to Andrew Pfaff. Andrew, I thought you were talking about all articles on the warrant. So yes, we did approve these for the annual town meeting before Jim withdrew them. So yes, but of course it was the old advisory committee, so we'll still have to revote this. Okay, so let's start with AP, Andrew.
No comments. I think I voted to vote in favor of them before, and they all make sense.
We did, we voted unanimously to support them. Okay, Marcy?
Yes, I don't have any comments or questions. I think they make sense, and I'm in favor of these as well.
Eric?
Same boat here. No comment. They look straightforward.
Okay, has Adam been pulled over?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. No comments here. No comments or questions.
Okay, there you go, Jim. So advisory has no comments for you.
I'll go to the Board of Selectmen quick. Chelsea, do you have any comments or questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Healy,
I do not. Thanks.
Mr. Stivers,
No questions. I support these.
none. Mr. Dennington?
No questions. I support them.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, do you have any intentions of taking any positions tonight, like particularly on these three? It seems like they're straightforward.
I promised everyone no, Lisa's only
Okay,
stick to
that's
that,
fine.
but it's obvious we're going to support these. So,
Okay.
It's too bad we don't have more like this. So there's going to be no issue with these three articles. We voted unanimously before, and I am.
Okay.
There's just no reason not to support these.
Okay, and we'll come back to them at the end. So just as in the spirit of moving things along. So Mr. Haggerty, I thank you very much. I believe you can enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. I may come back and watch your meeting later on. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jim. Take care.
Goodbye.
Mr. Purple, do you know if Ms. Rosenblum was planning on attending tonight?
I do not. No one actually responded that they were coming back tonight, or coming or not coming. So if she's not here, then I have to assume that she's probably not coming.
Okay, so Kathy, we'll come back to that one and see if she comes later within the meeting. Next is traffic study for HCV routes, article number 5. Nope. Yes, sorry. So article number 5 is to see if the Board of Selectmen has received requests for truck exclusions on various roads, and due to requirements for Mass DOT, alternate routes must be determined in order to put exclusions in place. The study will be used to determine the best routes for trucks to travel through Southborough, as well as the study will also give us an opportunity to see where the trucks are coming from. Mr. Purple, do you want to add anything further to that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's the cost of what the study would be.
No, I think it's real straightforward. I think the board, the board continually gets these requests for these heavy commercial vehicle exclusions. And if they're granted for one street or one neighborhood, it just simply pushes the issue to another street or neighborhood. And we just continue in that domino effect. And the board really wanted to take a comprehensive look at, doing a study and saying, where in town do we have the streets? Do we have the infrastructure, sidewalks, things like that to provide safe passage for vehicles and pedestrians that would make sense for the truck traffic to go? So that's, this $25,000 is based on a quote that was received. And that's really the gist of the article.
Okay, Kathy, so I'm going to go through the members of the board to see if they want to add anything to that, and then we'll go to advisory for comments and questions.
Can someone add, Mark, or view us what precipitated this? That is the article that was approved at town meeting for flag, as far as asking you to consider the exclusion. So the new advisory members understand what led up to this.
So, sure. So that means there was an article at a prior town meeting regarding non-binding, recommending the Board of Selectmen put a truck exclusion on Flag Road. And through the study of what the most appropriate route in order to do that is, one of the things that's required by Mass DOT is to supply an alternative route. This study will show that. We've also had other roads that have come forth to the town as well, concerned about the number of truck traffic. Pine Hill is one, Oak Hill is one as well. So we thought globally it was better to do a study to see where the trucks are coming from. So maybe we could address the issues. It's kind of a twofold, study as well. It'll help us down the road.
What budget is this going to come out of?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
What
So, Mark,
budget?
what budget is it going to come out of?
It's going to come out of an article, raise and appropriate.
Okay, so we're adding. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So Kathy, let me just go to Chelsea to see if she wants to add anything to that.
Thanks, Ms. Braccio. The only thing I would add is that the board has expressed concern, especially on the Flag Road, safety issues. And so what we want to make sure that we don't create an issue somewhere else in town. So that was another reason why we decided to go ahead with a more global study, so that we do what's best for all the residents.
Thank you. Mr. Healy, anything to add?
I do not. Thanks.
All right. Mr. Stivers.
No comment, thanks.
All right. Mr. Dennington.
No comment.
Okay, Kathy, so we'll let you open it up to advisory.
Okay, I'm just going to do the same order I did before. Andrew Pfaff first.
No real issue with the spend. The only question I have, and Kathy, maybe you have something similar, is were we better served with a capital article or putting it into an engineering operating budget? Because I think this might be something we kind of have a budget that we would roll over year to year in terms of, this could be done next year on other streets or other things. So adding it to the selectmen's engineering budget might be something that would help us for trends for next year.
Well, if you do that, it's not going to roll over, but if you leave it in this article, it will roll over. So
Not roll over the money, but roll over that it was spent. Right? So it's going to hit that item. We'll see it as an actual in a budget. And then, I think we should carry $25,000 every year for the selectmen to do different studies like this. If that makes sense.
Okay, so to be clear, instead of having this as a separate article, you'd like to see it in the selectmen's budget.
Correct. I'm in favor of it both ways, but I would prefer it that way.
Given that it's written, I'm not sure it's worth changing for now or discussing that, but I hear you.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else as far as the substance of the article?
Nope.
All right, Marcy?
Yeah, the only question I had is what is going to be the scope of the study? I fully understand the rationale and the need for it, but if we have, the traffic counters on the road, is it going to tell you what you're looking for at the end? So I guess it's just more of a question for those kind of figuring out who's going to do the study and if you're going to get the product you want. Otherwise, I fully understand why it might be needed.
So I will open that up to any members of the board that might like to respond as well.
Hey, Lisa, this is Marty.
Yep.
Okay. I think the simplest answer is that this is not going to be, first and foremost, a counting exercise. It is going to be, it's going to be twofold. Number one, I think the easiest question is going to be to be answered is where are these trucks coming from? The supposition by an awful lot of people has been that they are wayward trucks from Ken's, and the anecdotal evidence we have is that they are not. And so before we weigh into how we're going to reroute these trucks, we want to know where they're coming from and where they're going to. That's number one. Number two is, and it was touched upon, isn't so much counting the number of trucks or the like. It is determining what happens, and Mark referenced this, if the domino of Flag Road, for instance, falls. Do the trucks go to another street, to Deerfoot, where it's a problem? Do we then have an issue with Deerfoot? We close that and General Henry Knox becomes an issue. One of the things that was raised is the possibility of lifting the exclusion on Main Street, which apparently, I think Lisa, you referenced this in our meeting on Tuesday night, taking off an exclusion that's been put on probably has never been done by a city or town in Massachusetts before. So it's not something we have a particular appetite for, but by the same token, if the study shows that is the only real alternative, then we've got some safety issues and convenience issues that we would have to weigh, for instance, for a street that already has an exclusion. So those are the two primary reasons for structuring the study the way we did. And Mark, through Karen, we've already lined up who would be doing this, right? We've got a bid in hand. Am I right about that?
Yep.
You're correct. Yes.
Okay. So
firm bid is not an estimate, it's a firm bid.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Marcy, hello, by the way. Nice to meet you. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I was just, you helped answer it, and I understand after listening to the meetings why it would be needed, and I've heard all the public comments. I was just encouraging us to make sure we get the product we want out of the study. So that's it. Thank you.
Sure.
So Marcy, once the consultant renders their study, they, as Marty said, they won't have done the additional work that has to be done. If they identify a street that they recommend to put the exclusion on, then you've got to do the work to count to see if it actually qualifies. So there'll be another step if there's a road identified. So Marty, it's definitely not just Ken's Food. Pine Hill gets the FedEx trucks in the morning and afternoon, and we get the trucks going back and forth from the Framingham Pot Farm.
Lisa?
Yes, Sam, go ahead.
I think there's another interesting point that I've picked up along the way here on top of what Marty is saying. I'm hoping that this could give us some information to be able to, again, take a global look at the town to say, is there some configuration out there that is not dependent on what we have in place today? Is there a better way, if we had no exclusions today, to be able to route the traffic in ways that prevent disruption in the neighborhoods? And I'm pretty confident there's probably not a perfect answer there, but I think that this can give us some more data and access to some experts on this to say, if we start with a clean slate, how would we do it? And would that be better than what we have today? So that's one of my hopes for the result of this as well.
Good
Sam,
point,
do you
Sam.
really
Thank
expect
you.
them to answer that question with $25,000?
I expect them to be accessible to us to talk about it a little bit, and they might have some ideas. I doubt there's a perfect answer, but I think it's an interesting question to ask people who will hopefully have more data and be better positioned to have that discussion.
And
Eric?
Sam and Kathy, just very quickly, the folks who are doing this are the ones who were they were the engineers for the Main Street study. And so the nice thing is they're starting at third base in terms of their understanding of the road system in Southborough and the like. So that gives us a big advantage in terms of where the $25,000 is going to be going.
All right.
Good.
You guys, Eric?
Yeah, two maybe quick questions. First, I'm wondering, and again, forgive me if this has been addressed before my time on advisory or another meeting that I didn't witness. I'm curious if there is a proposed time for kicking this off, assuming this is approved, and also completion, at least of the initial phase. Secondly, I'm wondering if there is an area where you can view the full scope of either their proposal or what we put out for a bid to better understand actually what's included in the $25,000 spend.
So Mark, can you send us the actual proposal?
I can send you the actual proposal if people are more curious before I can get that done. It is in one of the selectmen's packets. I cannot recall which meeting, but obviously I think it was, I'd say sometime in August when that was put on the agenda for the selectmen to consider, but I will send that out.
All right, thank you. Eric, anything else?
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
Tom? Tom, we can't hear you. So I'm going to go on to Adam. We'll come back to you. So you may have to do something for your audio. Adam?
Yeah, I had some similar questions to what Marcy and Eric had raised. I also did worry about the $25,000 cost of this, sounding, from my experience, research and market research is typically much more than that. So I was a little bit worried actually that maybe we weren't going to get what we needed out of this, but I think Martin made the comment on that they're already starting at third base. So perhaps that's why there's some efficiencies in the spend there. If everyone's confident that we're going to get what we need, and if we can get a copy of what they will be providing, that would be helpful. The other comment I would make is I worry a little bit about some of the domino effects that have been mentioned here, that we might learn some things that have a cascading effect here. And I wonder if there's a proposed hypothesis that we have, if we were to assert the answer ourselves for what we would like to happen, and if there's a way to, in particular, validate that in that study, that approach would be a sound one. But I support the research. I think we'll learn a ton about it that could be helpful long term.
So Adam, you're very receptive as far as making sure this really is a firm number, because there have been times over the years where we thought we had firm numbers and we didn't. So it's always a good question to ask whether this really is firm for what they've agreed to do. So that's a good question. But we'll get a copy of the proposal before we actually take a position. All right. So to the BOS, do you think that this makes the Flag Road proponents, are they satisfied at this point as far as what's been done to basically do what they ask us to do at town meeting?
I don't think so, Kathy. I think that the belief is it's easier than it is to get the truck exclusion and to have the alternative route. As I had updated it at our last meeting, we had a great conversation with like the main engineers of Mass DOT. And as Marty had alluded to, they basically said they very rarely, if ever, had a truck exclusion rescinded, which is currently on Main Street. So it's not as easy as just us saying, yes, you actually have to go through the same process that you went through to get it to rescind it. So one of the things that we had talked about maybe potentially for short term, some ways to maybe alleviate something in the interim is we talked about signage on Route 9. I think that there are some of these trucks that's whether they're going to Ken's or they're just looking to turn around. We've seen them turning around at Middle Road and kind of backing up traffic because they can't take the turn there. And also, if it is a Ken's issue, potentially, as they're heading back towards Flag Road, what the state is willing to do is to put up additional signage. They're going to put up signage before Flag Road telling trucks that they can go and turn around at the interchange of 495. They're going to put additional signage on by Middle Road, letting trucks know that's not a U-turn and to just go up to 85 and use the Clover Loop to turn around. So those are some of the short-term things that can be done now. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as Chelsea also said, is just saying, okay, we're going to pick this road, because there are ramifications from doing that as well. And if Main Street is better equipped, you know, again, it's a process to go through with Mass DOT to actually get it rescinded once that's decided. So I hope that answered your question.
A lot of country roads here. Has anyone thought about actually calling Ken's Foods and letting them know what their trucks are doing?
So my understanding is, and Mr. Purple, you can jump into, because I know you've said it on these conversations, Karen Galligan has had conversations with Ken's and they have put steps in place notifying the drivers not to do that. So, but again, if we've seen some of the pictures of trucks trying to take a right onto Clifford, you know, they're clearly backtracking. So again, I can't say for sure where the trucks are going. Hopefully the study will give us a better guide. And in the interim, hopefully some signage might actually help.
Okay. All right. So I think that's advisory's questions on that one.
Okay. Next
Can I
up
just,
is,
can I just
sorry, go
ask
ahead.
a question back to what Andrew was talking about with where the funding should live? Andrew, do you mind just explaining what the difference would be?
So since this is a capital article, it doesn't show up in the budget. From
It's not real. It's not a capital article, Andrew. It's just an article.
Okay, it's an article, but it's the standalone, right? So what I'm saying is we would send a trend of having it in the budget, so that if next year, I think it would make sense to have this again for you guys to have money to do different studies like this, or to do a traffic study or to do something else, we
But
wouldn't have like 0 in the budget and then add 25, right? We would have a 25 to 25.
So I'm viewing this as a one-time evaluation to see what the best solution is long-term. And I'm hoping that we don't have to do this again. So I guess I'm not clear on why you would need it year over year.
We're going to discuss this more, Chelsea, when we get to the capital articles as far as the study there. So hold this till we get to there, and I think it'll be a little bit clearer where he's trying to go with this.
Okay.
Tom has fixed his audio, and he does have a question.
It's not working, Tom, but if you want to type your question into the chat, I'm happy to read it out loud. Okay, so Tom's question is, can you define quote unquote heavy, big difference between delivery truck and tractor trailer?
All right.
Is that it? Sorry, Lisa, is that an
Okay.
official term as a follow-up?
All right, let me go back to the question.
Does the proposal go any further as far as what they mean by heavy?
Again,
So Lisa, it's technically any vehicle over 25, commercial vehicle over 2,500 pounds, I
Yeah.
believe.
Right.
2.5 tons, sorry, 2.5 tons.
5,000 pounds, yeah.
yeah, I was looking up, I was trying to look that up real quick, Andrew, thank you.
Well, heavy SUVs are more than 5,000 pounds.
That's not a
It's
commercial.
commercial, so it would, if you had a commercial, I think F-250 basically and up would qualify. So it could be your landscaping trucks, it could be a delivery truck from Amazon. But Tom, it doesn't matter, it doesn't classify if it's going to the street it's on or an adjacent street. So if you lived on that road and you were having an Amazon delivery, it wouldn't be excluded. It's only if they were using it as a cut through to get to someplace else.
Mr. Dennington,
Yeah, I'm just not, Andrew explained it correctly that I was going to say it, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but that the HCV exclusion would not mean that a moving truck couldn't come to your house, or you bought a piece of furniture and had it delivered, it would still be delivered.
thank you, Andrew. All right, Kathy, is that it from advisory on this one?
I believe so.
Okay, next up is advisory membership. Kathy, we'll go to you.
Hopefully we'll support this one. Okay, so just to refresh everyone's memory, town meeting was going great till we got to Article 32 in May, and then we ran into a buzzsaw as far as what we were asking. We asked for 3 things, and 2 of them seemed to get lost in what the real problem was, which is there was a lot of issues. There were people who had real issues with an advisory member being on a committee appointed by the executive branch, the BOS, specifically the Capital Planning Committee. So it failed. And then BOS withdrew 33, which was related as far as making capital planning permanent. So we learned our lesson. Since that meeting, we met with, I talked to John Butler, who was not at the meeting. And we had actually Mr. Hamilton come to one of our advisory meetings. So we're trying to do this slowly. So we basically said, let's just try to get the 2 easier things approved first, and then we will deal with the issue as far as advisory members sitting on a permanent committee. Okay, so with that background, all we're asking for in this article is to do 2 things. Add officially a vice chair, because we've had a vice chair for several years now, and there's nothing in the bylaw that says we can have a vice chair. So to make it legal as far as what we're doing. And then second, to reduce the number of members from 9 to 7. And I think everyone on the Zoom understands why we're trying to do that. So right now we do have 7. So we're hoping that with the issue that was raised at the regular town meeting, not on this, that this will be much easier to get passed and accepted at special. So Simple as that. So I don't think advisor's got any questions here. So this really is whether you guys have BOS has questions and whether you think you're going to support it.
Okay. We'll go to Mr. Healy first.
Yeah. Hey, Kathy, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Marty.
I don't have any problem with this. The one thing, this is my memory of town meeting, is that there was more than just a suggestion about the reduction of the reduction from 9 to 7, that there were nefarious reasons underlying it. I'm pretty certain that there aren't, but have you either talked with other folks or thought about what your response to that is going to be?
Yes, I actually went up to a couple that actually voiced something like that. Whitney Bills, you may remember, was one of them. And I went and talked to him, and after I talked, he goes, "Oh," and I'm seeing serious. He said, "Oh, I didn't understand that. I wish I hadn't said what I did." So I did go talk to him. I did talk to Tim Litt afterwards, who had also opposed it. So again, I didn't think we were going to have the trouble we did. So I'm not a very good prognosticator, but I'm hoping that with a cleaner article and with a better explanation this time around, because we're well aware of what we heard at the town meeting, that we're not going to have the issue there. There's nothing nefarious here. It's really hard to staff a 9-person committee. And second, 7 seems to work better than 9. It's as simple as that, whereas there's nothing nefarious here. So it's important that everything we do seems to always have someone that thinks there's something.
All right, you're preaching to the you're preaching to the choir here. I just wanted to make sure you had the same memory I did about
No, I
that
did.
being
I
an
did.
objection.
And I did go talk to Whitney Bills and Tim Litt afterwards. I didn't talk to the others that opposed it, but I'm just hoping that with the capital issue out of the way, that we're not going to have the issue this time, because I know, for example, Al Hamilton's fine with this. This was not his issue. His issue was the crossover the executive and legislative branches of town government.
All right, thanks. I'm good.
All right, thank you, Marty. Mr. Stivers.
I'm fine with this, thanks.
Mr. Dennington.
Strongly support it. Thank you.
Ms. Malinowski.
I don't have any questions on this. Thank you.
All right, Kathy, I have no questions on this either at the moment. Thank you very much.
One more thing for the new advisory members: every person on the board of selectmen that you're seeing tonight was previously an advisory member, except for Lisa, who was on different committees. So everyone here has much experience. Lisa's got much experience too, but this is a very experienced group as far as advisory and trying to make sure we end up with a full committee.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Kathy. Next up is Article 2, Select Board, and I am going to go to Ms. Malinowski for this one.
Thank you, Ms. Braccio. So I think this has been kicked around for a while. I know Mr. Stivers had alluded that he was interested in doing this some time back, but this would be to update the Board of Selectmen to be Select Board. Over 100 towns in the Commonwealth have done it. There was some discussion amongst our board on the actual term of it and losing the meaning of where selectmen and selectwomen originally came from. But I think this probably makes the most sense to make it simpler and to be more inclusive and with the times.
Great. Is there any member of the Board of Selectmen that would like to add to that? We'll just go quickly down the line here. Mr. Healy?
Yes, I'm on record as, if it comes to a vote on Select Board, I'm supporting it. I think it's a dumb name. And I think something like Board of Select Women and Men, or Select Women and Select Men, makes a lot more sense. It's more historically accurate. And I think it actually better addresses the question of the objection that's been raised about it not identifying this board as being open to men and women. I mean, Select Board is neutral, but that means the town of Southborough will never have had a board of fill in the blank that recognizes specifically women as members in the title. So again, the fact that 100 towns have made the same mistake means nothing to me. I think it's a dumb name, and I think that Board of Select Women and Men makes a lot more sense.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Mr. Stivers.
I have some philosophical leaning toward Mr. Healy's point, but from a practical standpoint, I think that stuff is too cumbersome. And I would also point out that the Mass Municipal Association has a group, the Mass Selectmen's Association, which actually they've changed last year to be the Mass Select Board Association. And our esteemed chair is a member of that executive committee or whatever. There are 9 people on that. Now 7 of the 9 actually come from towns that have select boards. So we will, by doing this, get our chairman, our chairwoman back more in step with the rest of the world there. So again, not to disagree with Mr. Healy's point that because the rest of the world is doing it, doesn't make it right. But I think it's time to do this, and I strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Dennington.
Won't try to repeat points that have already been made. I also support it. And I guess one thing I thought of why I came around to supporting it was it's just fewer syllables. It's quicker to say select board than Board of Select Men or Board of Select Women and Select Men.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dennington. And I as well support it. So that being said, Ms. Cook will open it up to you and advisory.
All right, so I was going to start this one. So Marty, I totally agree with you. Select board is awkward. Chief Achilles has always called you guys select board since he was hired. And every time he says it, it just sounds weird. So I agree with that. But I also think there's a problem with just saying Board of Select Men and Board of Select Women, because that's not necessarily all inclusive in today's world either. So I think that, you know, the better choice of the two, even though it's not a great choice, is probably Select Board. Andrew Pfaff.
I agree with Kathy on that one.
Marcy.
Yes, I think all my questions were answered when you guys discussed this as a board the other night, and I agree with Kathy and Andrew at this point. Select board might be the best option.
Eric.
Same as the above. I have to say I like the little SB with Southborough. That feels nice, but supportive.
SB of the SB. Okay, so let's see, Tom. His audio is working, which it's coming on. So Tom, you definitely have an audio problem. So why don't you chat if there's something you'd like to add to this one? And then I'll go on to Adam while you're doing that.
I have nothing new to add. I support the change and glad we're at least changing it to something other than select men.
I mean, given we're looking at 2 women right now on the board segment, so I agree. Okay, so let's see, Tom, see anything? No issues with Tom, so that's it for us, Lisa.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Next up is Article 3, amend fiscal year 2022 budget. Ms. Malinowski, do you need to?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. So actually, I was just going to ask somebody to bring over Dr. Medina, but I will actually do that because I am the host right now.
Dr. Elker's there as well. I don't know if you want to bring her
Oh,
over as
perfect.
well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second so that
Sure.
I can introduce you all to Dr. Medina, who is the newest member of the Board of Health. So he's been on about 35 days, maybe. And so this is obviously his first joint meeting with the selectmen and advisory. And I'm going to call the Board of Health's meeting to order at 7:44, as we do have a quorum of myself and Dr. Medina. And also Dr. Alker is here, and I know some advisory members probably have not had the chance to meet her yet. She is our public health director who started January of last year. So she was able to join us tonight. So welcome, Dr. Medina and Dr. Alker. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen to show the warrant. Okay. And I am going to kind of give a little bit of a background because we have some new members on advisory that were not part of these discussions leading up to annual town meeting last year. But there were two positions that were budgeted in FY21 budget. The public health nurse at 15 hours and the public health director at around 17 hours. And so January of last year, Dr. Alker was hired, and most of her time was reimbursed by CARES because it was unbudgeted. And then April of last year, Taylor West was hired as a full-time public health nurse, also mostly funded by CARES due to there only being 15 hours per week in the budget. So last year, the Board of Health had intentions of going to town meeting to fully fund these two positions for FY22, but there was still CARES money available through December of 2021. And there was consensus met amongst Board of Selectmen, Advisory, and Board of Health to take advantage of the CARES funding and kind of see what other funding sources may be available as we moved forward into the FY22 budget. So therefore, the same budget from FY21 was budgeted in FY22. So now we find ourselves in October of 2021, and we have two employees whose contracts are through June of 2022, and CARES funding that is ending the end of this calendar year. So what you see on the screen in front of you is the proposed increase. Oh, and I should probably also mention that the benefits portion was also partially covered by CARES. So there's a salary component to this as well as health and dental component. So the increase to bring the nurse up to 40 hours, which would be a 25-hour differential, and the health director up to 30 hours per week. Her contract is 30 hours, not 40 hours. And so that would be an increase of about 12 hours per week. That salary differential from November 1st through June 2020 of 22 is 201,000. Sorry, that's the total amount that it would be. So it's a change of 69,223. So that's, if you can see my cursor here, that's the change for the salary. And then the budget of benefits for the health and dental is about 30,000 difference. So, and the reason why it's budgeted from November 1st through June is because once the monies are appropriated at town meeting, then we are not able to apply for CARES reimbursement. And I did check with the town accountant on that and town council to confirm that was the right way to go about this.
Chelsea, I still don't agree with that, but let's not get lost in that tonight. We'll get that settled. That still makes no sense, but we'll get it resolved.
Okay, so those are purely the numbers. And Dr. Medina, do you have anything else to add to the number piece of this?
I think, as we are still in the middle of our pandemic in terms of the amount of work our public health nurse and health director need to do in terms of, our case numbers are actually higher than they were last year. So I think, the degree of contact tracing is still there, as well as educating the public about COVID-19. And moving forward, as we look at all the services we can provide, right now, that whether through vaccinations and education, these positions are vital to our town's health. We've already got a COVID-19 booster clinic planned, as well as the influenza vaccine clinic planned, and these do require a tremendous amount of work and effort. by both Dr. Ackler and Taylor West.
Thank you. And the other thing that I just want to briefly touch on is we have a shared service grant that we applied for and received along with 3 other towns last year. So it's called the Greater, I'm not going to try to do, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Greater Boroughs Partnership for Health.
Thank you, Heather. And it's Northborough, Southborough, Boylston, and Westborough. And we're starting to see the benefits of that grant. I would say within the last 45 days, our food and housing establishments are getting up to speed on their inspections, which had been delinquent. And the education is going out. We're applying for regional grants together. And I don't want to get too deep into what we're doing because actually Dr. Medina and I are having a working session on Tuesday morning on the presentation for town meeting. And so we're going to be going through all these details. And we're happy to come back to you to talk about what we're doing in the health department and what we're looking for the future. The other thing that we engaged in over the summer was we had Dr. Faison, who I believe was part of the Board of Health for 12 years. He's since moved out of town, but he is on the Board of Health in his current town, and he actually did a report for us and took a lot of interviews of some key stakeholders in the town of Southborough and some of our regional leaders, and came up with a report that that went up on the website last week. So it's available for you to read. And he's doing a public forum on October 21st at 7 p.m. on Zoom that will be recorded. And he talks a lot about a regional approach overall over the next few years in how we can better utilize resources on a regional basis and share things. And so I think we've taken the first step to look at how that would work and how we could use our resources for the best of Southborough. So after that presentation, then the Board of Health will loop back and finalize our presentation for town meeting. So that's kind of the schedule that we're looking at, just to kind of give you a preview of what's coming. So Kathy, I will, actually the selectmen haven't heard this either. So, but I don't know if you have any questions on the numbers, but more to come on kind of the presentation and where we're at as, as a health department.
So Kathy, why don't you guys go first, and then we'll kind of switch off, and then we'll do the board second on this one.
All righty. So to advisory, we are going to have a long discussion about this one next Wednesday night, at least start it. There's a lot of background that the new members need to really understand why we are where we are with this. We spent a lot of time, and that's no exaggeration, last year during budget season, trying to sort out what the Southborough Board of Health should look like going forward. Once COVID was hopefully in the rearview mirror, we were trying to separate the impact of COVID from what the town really needs in a public health department. So what advisory was looking for was a bottom-up look at this department over the summer to basically come back to us and say, this is what we really think we need, with keeping in mind the fact that the state has certainly turned its attention toward encouraging towns to regionalize certain services offered by local health departments. Until now, everybody's been kind of on their own, but that's changing, and the shared services grant is one indication of that. So we basically ended up with a budget for fiscal year 22 passed in May that we hoped would give us the time to make this assessment so that we wouldn't make permanent 2 positions that had heretofore been part-time, until we really knew that's the right answer. So I haven't read Lou Faison's report yet. I know it's posted. I saw it. So thanks, Chelsea, for the heads up on that. So we need to read that report. And then we need to have an in-depth discussion about this at the next advisory meeting next Wednesday to really make sure we think that this is the right answer. So what happened last year, advisory did something that was a little bit unusual. We voted last year to basically backstop the fiscal year 22 Board of Health budget by saying that if there is no funding to basically cover the January 1st to June 30th, 2022 cost of the director and the nurse, that the advisory would use the reserve fund to cover that so that we didn't have to put that into the budget either. So we knew CARES Act was going to cover through December 31st. And then again, to try to allow the Board of Health, which we knew was going to probably have a new person on it, which is what happened here, enough time to really assess what this town needs so that we really can make a decision that really is a good long-term decision. So that's background of what happened last year. And by the way, welcome to both of our Board of Health people here tonight, and Chelsea, of course. So I don't want to say much more, Chelsea, besides that, because I really want to really dig into this next Wednesday and go back over and read his report, see what it says, and then have a robust discussion about what advisory thinks as far as this goes. But remember, advisory, our job is to make a recommendation to town meeting as far as whether we support or not support any article presented to them. So we just need more time to really think through this as far as what our position is going to be. But so tonight, to me, it says, I start on that as far as providing the info that people need to form their own decision as far as what they think.
And
AP,
sorry, can I just
Yes.
say one more thing that I probably should have said? So we discussed this as a board, and I think there were 4 options on the table. Don't bring anything forward for fall town meeting. Bring the full-time, bring one or the other, 2 full-time and leave the other one partially unfunded, or increase hours on both, or fully fund, which is what we decided to do. So I feel like it's our responsibility to bring this forward and alleviate any Board of Health request from the reserve fund, seeing as it's for all departments. So that is part of the genesis of bringing this forward, is to not take away from other departments that may really have something in the reserve fund.
Okay. AP, you want to add to anything I said as far as background?
No, I think the background is fine. I think only one part that, the budget, for employee benefits is centralized. I just would like to hear from Brian, Mark, if we can, on, are we sure we're going to need that money? Are we forecasting to be under or over? I understand we're padding it or increasing it, but are we increasing it artificially because we're not going to spend it, or do we really need to?
So I sent Brian an email late today, Andrew, and asked him that very thing. Where do we stand year to date? What does he think to do just what you said? Find out whether it looks like it's really needed.
Yeah, just so the new advisory members, the benefit budget is held centrally for all the departments and all the employees in town. So it's kind of just a big kitty. So that's what we're trying to get to.
And these numbers are based on the actual plans for these 2 employees. So I understand your question, but this number does tie directly to what is being spent for those 2.
I just want to point out Andrew's comment of big kitty. Big kitty is not big anymore. We have all the health plans for the town and the school employees, and I think we're only carrying, a handful, probably half a dozen family plans, and maybe half of that for single plans for people that may need to adjust their coverages during the year. So that used to be a lot bigger, but in refining the numbers, those numbers are a lot closer to actual. We're really not seeing the carryover at the end of the year of a lot of the benefits money that's unspent.
I don't think you had anything this last year, right? You did the year before, but not this past year.
Well, you're making my point. Yeah, we continue to get tighter. So it's not the cushion, so to speak, that it might have been in previous years. It's just not there.
Yeah,
I
get
don't know
Mark.
that he meant back. I don't think he meant that you got a big cushion in there. I think he meant it's a
Yeah.
big number.
I just know Mark Brian usually says, okay, I'm anticipating we'll have 20 changes, or he increases it for some assumptions, have those assumptions happened, I know like the IT person was a little delayed. Is there savings from that or et cetera? So just,
right.
If we think we're going to be, there and we need it, great. But if we think we're not, why artificially increase it?
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions is, as you just said, we've got like 20 plans, that we're assuming that could change, but that doesn't mean 20 health insurance plans. That means so many health insurance plans, so many dental plans, this type of thing. So it's not, again, you said big kitty. I just wanted to correct, big kitty isn't big. It's kind of like one of those big fluffy kitties that when it gets wet, it looks a lot smaller. It's that kind of kitty.
All right, that's a good analogy. Andrew, AP, anything else you want to add as far as the big picture here?
Nope.
Okay, so to the rest of advisory, you're welcome to ask questions tonight. Certainly your prerogative, but you may want to just hold them until we meet next Wednesday and really dig into this a lot more than we can tonight.
I just want to pop on real quick to clarify, Kathy, because I heard sort of two things. I understand we have next Wednesday evening, but was there some advanced materials that we were going to provide to review ahead of next Wednesday, or is the presentation strictly going on during the meeting next week? I just want to make sure.
You will get materials, including, I'll make sure that you get the copy. So everybody needs to read Lou Faison's report. I'd say that's homework number one. And then I will put together a memo that really goes into great detail just to make sure what I said a few minutes ago makes sense, because it was complicated what we did. And just to make sure, and then Chelsea and I will come to a meeting of the minds as far as whether we can use CARES for November or December or not.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I would also encourage you, if you have any questions after your meeting on Wednesday and you can't come to the forum, that you send your questions to me so I can read them into the Q&A section of Dr. Faison's forum. Or I would love for you to attend if you can.
So anyone else from advisory, is there any other questions from either Tom, Adam, or Marcy? As far as tonight, what you want to answer, or do you want
Not
to
at this time for me. I'll review all the material though.
Marcy?
No, not right now. I look forward to reading the report and hearing more information. Thank you.
Tom?
If you can hear me, no questions.
We can hear you now.
Okay, there we go.
All right, Lisa, back to you.
Great, thank you. So we'll go to Mr. Stivers. Any questions, comments?
No questions. I followed this along the way, so I think I understand what the proposal is. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Dennington?
So I have a question. So I see the article is it's brought forward by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. Who would be presenting it at the town meeting?
So I'll jump in first, I guess. I'm happy to let the Board of Health carry the water on this. I mean, I think that the joint sponsorship of this is twofold. One, because Board of Health had pointed out they don't control the benefits, the selectmen do. So that's why it's joint for that. The second piece, and I was hoping Ms. Malinowski was going to cover this part so I wouldn't have to, but there's there's one other piece to this at the, which is basically adjusting a line item in the Water Enterprise Fund, which we had assumed that the MWRA assessment for town was really going up an awful lot. But obviously, Mr. Stivers did his work for us on the advisory board, and it didn't go up quite as much. And so when the town accountant is working with the Department of Revenue now on the balance sheet and trying to get this all right, this was something that really needed to be corrected. And since we happen to have a special town meeting, we're able to address it and do that. And so this is at a change of $150,000 less than what was budgeted. So I didn't think it was going to generate a whole lot of discussion, but Mr. Dennington, that's another reason why I think that the joint sponsorship between Board of Health and Board of Selectmen.
So is the idea also by kind of pairing them that the savings from the Water Enterprise Fund kind of, in a way, funds the other increases for the other line items?
No, it's
No?
separate, so it's not gonna
No,
help.
it's a completely separate fund, and essentially this change will put the proposed funding through the water rates and will align it better with the proposed expenditures.
It might
Okay.
help your water bill down the road, but it's not gonna help your tax rate.
Okay, understood.
Is that it, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Healy?
I'm good, thanks.
All right, and I am good as well. So thank you, Ms. Malinowski and Mr. Purple.
Ms. Braccio, I would like to adjourn my Board of Health meeting, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Health meeting at 8:06 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay, Malinowski, aye. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Okay, thank you both for coming. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Kathy, I know we had the zoning piece on next, but I see that Mr. Malinowski is here. If we could just bring him over and ask if he prefers to go now, or if he would like to wait until after the downtown district for the capital budget Article 4.
Okay.
I would love to go now. If
Okay,
there's a baseball game tonight, in case anyone didn't know.
Lisa, Jay's here too. I don't know if you want to bring him
Yep.
over.
absolutely. I just wanted to find out first, Andrew, if Jason was ready to go. So if we could bring Jay over as well, that would be great. And Chelsea, if you could go to Article 4, you're right there.
Okay.
And as soon as we bring, sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
I lost Jay somehow, unless someone else brought him over.
Let me see.
I'm here.
Oh, he's
Oh,
there.
okay.
Hi.
All right.
All right.
So Mr. Malinowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I just will note for the record that capital planning did post a meeting, but I only see Ms. Braccio and myself here, so we do not have a quorum, so I will not call us to order. So I am here to present, with some help, 2 articles that we are proposing we brought forward, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. The first is phrased as an engineering capital feasibility study for $30,000. So as many of you know, we have a subcommittee currently working with the school department, of which Ms. Cook is also a member of, where we are analyzing the feasibility of the school properties and what is needed moving into the future. That is in conjunction with the school committee, who obviously will hold the ultimate decision there. But more recently, we have engaged a designer through a design selection process to look at all town departments, absent our public safety departments, i.e. police, fire, and dispatch, to understand what their space needs are moving forward. That money for that study, which is still ongoing, was funded through an article at the 2020 annual town meeting, which was a very general, broad capital studies article to assist the newly formed capital committee at that time to bring forward proposals to town meeting. The reason we're bringing something forward now is we are very close to having a much broader plan for the town. And we don't know whether we'll need funding between November 1st and July 1st. And we don't want to be the cause of having to call another special town meeting between November 1st and whenever you're setting the date for the annual town meeting. And obviously funding does not become available until July 1st at an annual town meeting. So what we are proposing is to bring forward an article for $30,000 that would give us the ability to make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen to ultimately release that funding to support our initiative to bring something forward with our comprehensive plan to town meeting, hopefully in March. We just didn't want to be handcuffed in any way, shape, or form by the inability to get the proper external third-party support to assist us in kind of achieving a goal that candidly has been out there for a very long time. On the flip side, we're very cognizant of the fact that no one likes to spend money on consultants unless absolutely needed. That's why we have phrased the wording in this article requiring us to make a presentation in a public forum where the public can weigh in on whether it's a good use of funds. And if the public doesn't agree and the Board of Selectmen don't take a motion to support it, that time we will gladly return the money to the town in a future article at the annual town meeting. But again, this is just giving us a little bit of flexibility to advance certain items in the event it is needed between November 1st and July 1st. And, I'll close by saying part of the rationale here, in addition to everything I've said, is we are generally concerned that individual groups that have interests that they've been waiting very long for and have been very patient allowing this process to run may start to bring forward their own articles at town meeting. And we want to have the chance to actually finish what we believe will be a very comprehensive analysis and hopefully a plan that works for the entire demographic of Southborough, not one contingent or another. I think we all know and can agree that it's the collaboration that occurs between multiple groups that leads to most of our successful projects in town. And, we just may need the ability to build some more collaboration to avoid one-off projects that may not be in the interest of our longer-term capital plan. So that's the background. I'm happy to entertain questions.
All right, Kathy, how about we go with Board of Selectmen first on this, and we'll do advisory first on B. So I will go to Mr. Dennington.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the feature of where you're asking to raise the money, but would then come back to the Board of Selectmen with more specifics before actually spending it. I guess my question is just the $30,000 figure and how you arrived at that particular figure.
Part of it came through some of the feedback we got during the design selection process. We actually were pretty successful with managing the fee there to $20,000 for an initial phase.
Are you talking about the public safety building?
Nope, for the space needs study that we're doing
right
now.
Okay, all right, okay.
So we found it to be a fairly successful negotiation tool that we didn't have more than a certain amount available to vendors, and we certainly got enough vendors to interview at that time. So the $30,000 was understanding that any phase 2 is going to cost more than phase 1, but we also know that whether it's the current design firm that's assisting us or a different RFQ that Mark and his team will have to issue, that we would be able to ring fence it, with the understanding that obviously the vendors want the larger prize, which is actually any sort of construction project, and not over budget for something at this stage. So that was the I'll call it the art, not the science of coming up with that number.
So this one is art. This is not exact like the traffic study. So
this is not a formal bid.
You don't even know exactly what you're going to need, correct?
Yeah,
that's correct. That's why we feel like we owe the town a presentation before anything would actually be spent from it.
And how much is left in the 20 article?
That hasn't been accrued, approximately $5,000.
Right, so it's almost gone. That was 30 to begin with?
Yeah, and 20 of it went to the space needs study, and the rest went to incidentals in and related to the school project.
So has the school needs study committee, I'm sorry, I'm not getting the name of it right.
School research subcommittee.
School research subcommittee. Do you have a written work product from the prior studies that I could look at to just periodically to familiarize myself with the issues? And then I guess the second question is the pieces of the puzzle you're referring to. Is one of those potentially like the Council on Aging and the needs of the senior center? Okay.
Yes, that is definitely a group. We're also having extensive conversations with the library. Are the two groups we're spending a lot of time with, and recreation is forthcoming as well.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, I can get you what we have to date, but Andrew, I'll tell you, there's gonna be a lot of presentations potentially before November 1st, mainly by the superintendent, on where he and his team sit. And then obviously capital planning continues to meet in public with our designer as well. Two different processes that have to meet in the middle somewhere.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Malinowski.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Healy.
I don't have any questions. I think, Jason, it makes a lot of sense. Going back to advisory, Andrew's point earlier, I mean, this is further, basis for maybe having a fund that can be tapped so that you don't have to worry about, the fact that there's a special town meeting or that you'll have to call a special town meeting. But even as I'm saying that, I can hear, among others, John Butler's head exploding about putting that sort of money aside for the possibility of of studies coming up and the like. But in this instance, I mean, it's short term. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. I've been following the committee discussions on this one, so I don't have any questions. I think it makes good sense. So I'm set.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stivers. And as I said on capital, I am also good on this one. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so before I ask for questions from the other advisory members, when we add up everything that we're proposing on this warrant that will affect the tax bill for fiscal year 22, we are going to be pushing 4%, which I don't like that number. I really want to keep it at 3 as a first number. So I know 30 is peanuts. It's not going to move it very much. But in the past, and Jason will remember this, the reserve fund has been used to fund studies when we've actually needed to do a study and didn't have the money to do. So there's always a reserve fund that could be used. The fact that we may make a decision to close the school and lots of things going on there, I think could probably justify reserve funds. So I still think that's probably, in my mind, a better. If it was a bigger number, I'd really probably fight harder for that, but it's not a very big number. So I'm kind of on the fence as far as which way to go with this one. So having said that, AP.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that the study is certainly valid. And I think, Kathy, with you in terms of funding source and things like that, and Marty, I would agree with you. I mean, my thought, it's already here in the article. I don't know if it's much of a stink to make about it now, but I would say we should look at the budget for next year. I mean, historically, selectmen have had a management consulting budget or a miscellaneous contracted services budget. I think, especially for an ad hoc committee, which this is, it might be a good idea for you guys to hold some budget centrally to help for ad hoc committees that maybe get created after the fact that you don't know about. It's kind of I'd rather have it your purview than someplace else, but it's already here, and it's Kathy's point. It's kind of low dollars, but we'll talk about it when it comes to more in terms of the overall tax rate, I guess.
Okay, Marcy.
I don't have any questions on this that haven't been answered, but I would like to see more discussion later when we go through the budget.
Eric.
Same as above. Out of this, I'm mostly interested in the conversation about how this plays into future budget allocations and addressing future needs. So certainly a lot to discuss, but as of now, this makes sense.
We're going to discuss this one more too next week too, so we've got more to discuss. John? Tom, sorry. Everyone knows that Tom is John Wilson's son, right? So I do this frequently. Tom, sorry.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Adam?
Jason, what's the likelihood that you will be putting a presentation or a proposal for some of these funds.
Highly likely.
I agree with that.
My goal, Adam, is that is either some sort of sizable plan that's presented as part of the annual town meeting or as part of a special town meeting in and around the time of the annual town meeting. That's the ultimate goal. What
And
that is, I have no crystal ball.
yeah, so that's the dilemma here, that you're going to need the money. You're just not sure exactly when or how.
Yeah. And I guess I used to sit obviously on the other side on advisory, and Kathy, I thought about your thought on reserve fund, but knowing obviously that you already approved something for the fire department, knowing that you kind of have this Board of Health thing still out there and not knowing where that will land, I didn't think it was responsible just to assume that it would pass muster with advisory and or that the funding would be available if we came to ask.
So Jason, if you didn't think that advisory had anything that we've already agreed to do, so if you just said we've got the 190, which includes the 10,000 that we don't need for Board of Health, would you say that any differently? Would you conclude that you would just as soon it go through? Because if we do the reserve fund, it's not going to hit the tax rate. I'm still just afraid, and I don't have the answer to this, that we're still going to be in for a little bit of surprise when Possibility finalizes the evaluation for 1121. I asked him again today, but he didn't get back to me, so I would think it's done. I still think there's going to be a shift to residential because of the impact on commercial vacancies in rates as of 1121, which means that 3.19 may really be higher already. And I also asked Brian to let us know if there's anything else that's happened. A lot of times after town meeting, things happen that still adjust it further. So I don't know if we're really still at 3.19 or it's different. So I'm just trying to keep that year over year to something very close to what we told the town in May. But again, 30,000 ain't gonna make any difference. It's the other stuff that really affects it more. So I'm still pretty agnostic with this, Jason, as far as where it comes from.
Yeah, I think the amount makes it easier to make it palatable, right? It's a small amount. I'm kind of with Kathy though, in terms of the precedence for something like this, and what if the amount was higher in the future? So,
and the other thing too, do you want to get a discussion at town meeting about what we're going to do with schools? I don't. We're not ready for it. So this may open up that. When Jason explains, what we are thinking about doing. So if you instead said, look, we know we're going to probably have to spend some money on studies. It's unexpected. It's not budgeted. Reserve fund can cover it. You at least prevent that discussion from happening prematurely.
Yeah, this is a one-time item, I guess.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll talk some more. So I think everyone's convinced that we're going to need money for studies for certain things. I don't think that's the issue here. It's just where to fund it from, what pocket to take it out of. So Lisa, I think I covered everybody in advisory.
Okay, great. Jason, do you want to head on to?
I do.
Thank you.
And I will moderate this one. I'd like to ask Mr. Purple to explain the history of why this one is coming forward now, which may appear to some people that are paying close attention duplicative of what we did at the 2021 annual town meeting. So I'd like him to just kind of explain that piece, and then I'm going to shift to Jay to explain what he's done since joining, because Jay was not part of the 2021 discussion. So Mark, if you're there, I'd greatly appreciate you explaining.
Sure. Jason, if you'd just gone a little further, I think you could have finished it up for me. But to explain the issue, take it back just a little bit further. If you recall, last fall, early winter, Tom LaFlame, our IT manager, left for another community. And at that time, he had prepared a capital article. I believe it was about $90,000 for replacement of our servers for our technology. And when he left, there was about a 5-month gap until we were lucky enough to bring Mr. Mtc on board in the same capacity. And during that time, the technology committee, took a look at some of these items and made some recommendations on how they should be funded. And I think that 90,000 article was reduced down to $40,000. And that was the article that went to town meeting. Unfortunately, in the transfer from the article to the motions, that $40,000 was not part of the motion. And it was, the best that I can tell, the way it happened was that there were two $40,000 items under capital right next to each other. One was the IT servers, one was the fire turnout gear, and only one of them got carried into the motion. And then the fire turnout gear ended up being taken off completely because it was funded through donations from Fay and St. Mark's. So that was, again, unfortunate that it did happen. If there was a silver lining to that, it does allow the new IT manager to have some say as to how how he sees this item being funded and what it should include and how it should be done. He does, the MTC does provide a good resource for him to help vet some of these issues and provide thoughts on how things should be done. But at the end of the day, it is the technology manager who has to, is responsible for these issues, has the liability of whether they work or not. And so is that enough of a description, Jason?
I think so. And maybe can you just, before we go over to the technical merits with Jay, can you just explore or explain what you've done to date related to CARES in looking into the potential funding there and why this is still something you're bringing forward at this point in time?
So I can do the beginning of it, but then we're going to get into the technical pieces. And I really don't think you want me talking about the technical pieces, but we have had some conversations, put in some feelers out to the people at the state level who are controlling the funding for CARES as to whether some or all of the requested funding for the servers could be done through CARES. Waiting to hear back through the town accountant's office on that. We're also exploring a community compact grant for technology that would also provide some funding for this. So there are a couple of different avenues we're taking a look at. We do have an existing community compact grant for technology, which is connecting all of our buildings through a fiber network. That has not been completed yet. And we are hoping that the fact that it's not completed, basically because of a lot of delays due to COVID, that's not going to be held against us. Normally, you've got to finish up and complete a community compact grant for a particular area before you can get another one for the same area. But we're gonna take a shot at it anyway.
So there is a chance that this motion or article, depending on the recommendations, may get altered on town meeting floor based on how it's printed in the warrant.
It could get altered on town meeting floor in part or in its entirety. If there was something to be that happens to our benefit through CARES, but I believe community compact grant, you won't know until probably sometime after Thanksgiving, but sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, as to whether that comes to fruition or not.
But are we going to wait till we hear? I mean, it may not be in time for the special, but are we going to wait to purchase these till we really have exhausted all of these other possible funding sources? Or Jay can tell us this when he starts talking, but is the need so critical we really have to go ahead and get them ordered?
No, I will say that I don't want to apply for the grant and then get and then take the funds through the tax base. So I think that in the same way that you discussed advisory being the backstop for some of the Board of Health items, with regard to the way the funding was done for FY22, that this article would be the backstop in the event that some of these other funding opportunities do not come to fruition, either in total or in part. So yes, we'd wait.
Okay, with that, I maybe just ask Jay, not to get too technical, but just walk us through your process since you joined, kind of repeat some of the stuff you already told Capital, but also speak to the timing of why you're recommending this now, absent waiting for obviously community compact and some of the other decisions, and why you would recommend not waiting until July 1st, because I think that was the main topic of discussion at Capital.
Well, I mean, the conversation had come up about a month or so ago about getting the funds to start this project, and that's kind of when I found out about the fact that the funds wasn't that they weren't passed. So we're not in a dangerously critical place where I knock on wood every time I say this because I'm in IT. So, but we're not in a dangerous place right now with our infrastructure in place. But utilization is getting to a point where we need to think about upgrading the pieces of equipment that we have in there, meaning the 3 physical hosts that we have there. Storage is getting there, but utilization is what I'm more concerned about when it comes to CPU and memory, and just making sure that we have what we need in place. So in case there is an application that comes up in the next month or so from either the public safety building, if it has to do with fire department or police department, where we need to upgrade an application and we need more utilization on that particular server, the concern is that we would not be able to really increase much of that at this time. So it is definitely, besides the fact that the servers are reaching their end of life or past their end of life in a sense, then they just need to be upgraded. That is a lot of the reason why I'm presenting that now. And then questions.
And I'll just add that Capital did vote unanimously to bring this forward after consideration of the funding sources that Mark mentioned in terms of CARES and Community Compact, I think was coming out in and around the time Capital took the vote. And Andrew, I should note, Andrew was a member of Capital at that time, but abstained from that vote. So Lisa, Kathy, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, Kathy, advisories first.
So, Mr. Martell, I'm sorry, I just saw you here. I didn't realize that you had joined us, but very timely. So to remind Board of Selectmen and to let advisory know, Tim Martell is our resident technology expert on advisory, as well as Andrew. But Tim has really led the charge the last couple of years to try to make sure that we are staffed properly, given all the things that go on in this world that are bad these days. So Tim, I'd like you to start off with this one as far as asking questions as far as what's being requested here.
I had a couple questions. One is, are the servers off support at this point?
No, currently they still have support. They do have a support contract that we pay for yearly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, for the 3 servers, are they configured for redundancy, or do we not have that?
They are so the way our current licenses are for VMware, as far as supporting our VM servers, we don't have the ability to high availability. We're not able to vMotion any of our servers currently if there was an issue with one of our hosts, due to the fact that VMware's licensing that we currently have right now, it's the lowest level of the licensing for VMware currently. We would need the enterprise version of VMware, and that's what I'm looking into getting as well.
Okay. I only asked because of the criticality of the public safety function as well as your domain controller.
Well, I mean, to that as well, all of our servers are being backed up currently, daily, even twice a day. every single day to the cloud. So if we did have any type of issue, we would be able to restore. And I have spoken to our backup team about this, and to make sure that we do have the ability to restore if we did have a crisis on our hands.
Right. Let's say one server goes down. Right?
Yeah.
And it happens to be hosting a mission critical app.
Yeah.
What happens? Like, what's the backup plan?
So we would be able to spin up a server within at least 4 hours onto any one of our other hosts that we have available.
Okay. And did you say that that's something you're looking, the enterprise licensing, it's something you're
Yeah,
looking
with the enterprise licensing, that'll at least give me the ability that if something did happen to a host, that I would be able to, it not even myself, but also it would just kind of do it on its own. It would say, hey, this host is going down. We're migrating over to the other host that's readily available. So that would be the ability with enterprise level to be able to do that, not only automatically in a sense, but also my ability to do that as well.
Understood. Thank you. That's the only questions I have, Kathy.
Okay, so hi Jay.
Hi.
I think this is the first time we've had a meeting with you. So hello.
Yeah.
Um,
Hi everyone.
welcome. Okay, so when we left off at last town meeting, we had $40,000 in the budget for server replacements. So my first question is, why has the 40 grown to 85? I don't remember. I think the 40 was a little bit of a nebulous number to begin with. I'm not sure it really was intended for a specific number of servers, but nonetheless, it's grown from 40 to 85. And it was, Mark was right, it used to be 90 when last time Tom had.
Yeah. So I was given 40. I didn't have the option to really, at that moment, I didn't feel like I had the option to really choose which way I wanted to go. It was like, this is the 40, this is what we have. This happening, it kind of, I don't want it happened. It was out of my control that this did happen, but it gave me the ability to really give it my look and see how I feel it needs to happen. And, to my predecessor's defense, when he came up with that number, it made sense. A lot of the equipment that we have in place, to replace it with something that is in the same realm or better, the numbers make sense. And even after talking to some vendors over the last week or so, and still waiting for some quotes in a sense, but still just having that conversation with them and seeing what we have in place. Unfortunately, IT equipment is not cheap, and especially with COVID in place and chips just totally being back ordered and processors being an issue, the prices have gone up in some sense with a lot of this equipment. So even if we wanted to scale it down, the prices are still not going to be as low as $40,000. They could be above $40,000, maybe not above $85,000, but they could still be in that sense of not cheap. So it gave me the ability to reassess it, really take a look at it in my view. I've done this a couple of times in the past. I've had team members around me to kind of go over this conversation with, and I have the MTC in the sense to kind of piggyback with this stuff. So that's really my answer to it, is just having my sense of it, having a real look at it in my end, and what we need to keep the town safe, to keep the town up to par with cybersecurity in the sense of defense. This is what I'm coming up with.
So Jay, we are well aware that you were thrown into the fire when you were hired. So I know you didn't have time to scrub the budget, so that's fine. But when we left off we had several discussions with MTC, and the plan when we left off was that we were going to move as much as we could to the cloud, and therefore eliminate the need to have local infrastructure. I know that the public safety software, et cetera, needs to stay on local service. It's not compatible with cloud. So we've got that too. But I'm just surprised that we need 3 new servers to do that. So I guess that's what I'd like you to get into a little bit more detail. Are we still heading toward the cloud with things that can go to the cloud, but we still need 3 to host what can't go to the cloud? Is that what you're saying to us now?
Yes. So believe me, I want us to be as much as we can in the cloud as humanly possible. It helps us as a town, and for security purposes, it does assist us. we are not there yet in a sense of infrastructure in place to be completely cloud-based. We do have some applications currently that are being used in the cloud, like some of the, accounting stuff as well. There are pieces to this puzzle that needs to be put in place for us to have the ability to go cloud, but also know that we're never going to go down with our providers, with ISPs, like for Verizon as an example. If Verizon went down tomorrow while we're at work, then we're down. We have no cloud connection to let the town continue working forward. So there's a couple of pieces that need to be put together within this whole puzzle to make it 100% that we can go to the cloud. And on top of that, with VMware, you have to have at least a standard of 3 hosts in place to have the ability, like Tim was talking about, where we can, migrate servers around via virtual machines so that we can migrate those around in case one host fails. It's all part of keeping the redundancy in place so that if one server fails, we have the ability to migrate those servers, those virtual servers, to another physical server so that the town can continue to run. And it falls into that VM world of licensing and how they plan the entire infrastructure. It's the ability of having the 3 physical servers in place so that we always will have redundancy so that items can always move around in case something goes down. So it can be a lengthy conversation, and it might be a very technical conversation, and I don't want to lose anyone in the mix, but there's a lot more to the puzzle than just, hey, let's go to cloud tomorrow. I wish we could, and I want us to. And if anything, I'm trying to price items that won't have us in a sense where we're completely fixated to having to grow with servers all the time. It keeps us in a place where I can start the process of putting those other pieces that I'm talking about together so that we can minimize our reliance on physical equipment and start moving some of that equipment to a cloud-based, whether it's VM in the cloud and taking our servers and bringing them to the cloud and having that redundancy in place as far as ISPs go, so that we never have a downtime in our town, so that the fire department, police department can always connect to their services and do their job daily, and the town hall and town employees as well.
I believe if a couple of people that normally go to town meeting come, you're going to get that same question asked at town meeting. So this is good practice for answering that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 3 servers. You're going to replace all 3. If
Yep.
you did it tomorrow, would $85,000 cover the cost of the equipment and all of the implementation that you need to pay for to get them online?
I'm not going to give you a solid answer on that right this moment. I'm still waiting on the quotes to come in, but yes, my point is to at least keep it within that budget that I'm receiving from the town. And again, a lot of what I'm trying to do, as Mark, as the town administrator alluded to earlier, is try to get any type of assistance, whether it's through CARES or the community compact, to pay for some of this. At the end of the day, I don't want to have to see the town entirely take the hit on this. I'm going to work as hard as I can with the town administrator, with the town accountant, and trying to get this funded from other resources, so that we don't have an issue with where it's over budget or under. If it's under budget, then we're in a good place anyway. But I'm working hard to make sure that we at least get that part covered.
Okay, so now I assume you probably have had a chance to scribe your budget for fiscal year 22. Do you see any other issues with it? You haven't hired the second person yet, is my understanding.
No, not yet. I'm waiting on this town meeting to get that process going.
Okay, so that money is sitting there. So there's going to be some excess in that line item because that line item was funded for July 1st.
Yep.
Got that. So
yes.
If you look at the overall budget to see if there is any other things that need scrubbing that actually could go down, so we end up with a net number to approve here.
I can dig into it.
You don't have to answer that right now. We could talk about
exactly. I would like to have more of a conversation a little bit more internally to figure out what that answer would be. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, whatever I can do to assist the town is in the sense of having to have the town foot the bill is what my goal is at the end of the day.
So I'm not trying to put you on the spot as far as knowing. Okay, so now everybody remember this though. Yes, the $40,000 was missed in the motion, but that 3.19% projected year-over-year increase does include the 40. So we're really only adding 45 as far as the impact on what we towed the town. So I get we've got to go for the 85, but the 40 is already built into our spreadsheet, and it's in the 3.19. So it's really 45 as far as what's going to affect it. Okay, so last question is, has MTC weighed in on this proposal?
So I had a conversation with the MTC. I had in our last meeting, I spoke to them on this at the time, and at the fact that I was trying to look into CARES money to get this all. And at the moment, at that time, all of this was supposed to be closed, and I didn't think we had a chance to even bring this up here. So I have had the conversation with the chair of the MTC about this last week. We had a good conversation about even cloud-based and knowing that the town can't go cloud entirely. He at this moment at least, and he was on board with me on that. And also, I am working with them, and I'm going to work with them as far as tweaking this price and making sure that it's the right fit and making sure that it works with the town. Budget wise and also physically as a piece of infrastructure for the town. So I look forward to having another meeting with them. I believe we have another one in October to increase this conversation and hopefully dig into it a little bit more. So yes, the conversation has happened and it's continuing.
So we will invite them to, just so you know, to one of the next 2 advisory meetings, and we'll invite you also so we can all kind of wait at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for me. AP.
Thanks, Kathy. AJ. So I think one thing that you mentioned that just kind of piqued my interest is we were talking about if your ISP goes down, if Verizon goes down, will the physical servers be at public safety? So that's not going to be an issue?
The public servers are the physical servers are at public safety.
Okay.
If the ISP currently went down, we still have access to our network internally. So they would have access to physically their servers. We would not be able to get outside to the outside world if Verizon, in a sense, went down.
Yeah,
it would still have access to their physical. Yeah, because we're, as you all know, we're at like 90% at this point as of the town being entirely under the fiber network. So we all have connections to each other as far as getting to, access to the servers, to what they need to do and get their job done. So in that sense, yes, they would have access to the servers.
Perfect. I was just checking on that.
Yeah.
So I think for me, obviously, the 85 it went up. I still don't get why it fell off the warrant. I still think it should be approved, but anyway, that's a different story and for town council to weigh in on. But the other thing, and Kathy, we can look at this more in another meeting, but my calculation, Jay, you should have probably about a $40,000 savings in salary if you bring that person on in November. Plus, we budgeted $4,000 for ClearGov for the capital software that we're obviously not using. And then I think we had the original quote was $45,000 for the servers, and we had 40 for the assets and 5,000 for the migration. So with the 5,000 still in there. So by my calculation, we have 49,000 here, and then we had the 40,000 that fell off the tax rate. So there's your kind of 85, 90. So it shouldn't really move the needle. So in that sense, I'm much more supportive of it. So basically, if we put the 40 back that should have been there in the first place, and we adjust your budget around for stuff that's not there, I think we can fully cover it. But I think Kathy, we might want to look at that in more detail in future meetings.
I agree. Okay. It's not fair to start doing this to Jay tonight without him knowing we're going to talk about everything else.
Yeah, I figured I'd give him a preview.
I'm already afraid. No.
No. Anything else, Andrew?
No, that's all I got.
Marcy?
I think Andrew Pfaff just answered the questions I had, and I look forward to discussing it further at our next meeting. Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, 2 quick questions. One, if one of the physical servers went down today, right? Or do we have the memory and the space to keep everything up, to actually do that migration? Right? You mentioned you could do it in 4 hours, but do we have the capability currently, or is that in question?
So the way the servers are currently allocated, I would be able to spread them between the other remaining 2 servers. And again, this is why it's important to get this going, because I don't want to feel that uncomfortable feeling of, again, I'm knocking on wood, of that happening. But yes, if I needed to, I can allocate between. And there are some servers that if I needed to keep offline, then I would have to keep them offline. They wouldn't be like critical in a sense of I have to keep them on. Speaking of like maybe just one domain controller at least, in a sense. But yeah, I would have the ability to at least go between the remaining 2. Again, this is important to get it going so that I don't have that icky feeling when I wake up in the morning.
We don't want an icky feeling. No, I'm with you. And again, forgive me, because some of this is I'm relatively new to this conversation.
Yep.
The current 3 physical servers, were they all installed at the same time? They all the same life?
I believe they were, and I'm speaking to that only because I was not here when they were first installed. This was prior to my time. But from what the documentation that I have looked at, it seems like they all were in place at the same time.
Okay. Awesome. No, I think that's really helpful. And it sounds like based off what you're saying, if God forbid 2 went down, that would be critical.
Yeah, that's a whole other story that we don't want to talk about.
Great. I don't want to think about it. Totally fair. Follow up to there, and this may be really naive as well, but there were some phone outages and other service outages recently reported to the town. Is that at all related to this need, or is that a separate issue?
No, that was actually something to do with our VoIP carrier. It actually stemmed to the very top of our VoIP carrier. So we use New Horizon, and they funnel all of their VoIP interactions to a company called Bandwidth, which is like one of the top few companies in the country that does VoIP. And they were being hit with a DDoS attack in last week and a half that they finally admitted to, probably around Wednesday timeframe. Because at that point, by Monday and Tuesday, I'm panicking, like, what's going on? But this was something that was nationwide. It was from here to California. It was happening. And
it affected my office too. So yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Just my office.
Yeah, and it was other locations that I was talking to, prior places that I've worked. I've spoken to them, and they were like, "Yeah, we were down too." The lucky thing that we had in our case was 911 wasn't down, and in some parts of the country, 911 was down. So it was we kind of cut the lucky end of this whole situation, but it was a DDoS attack that did happen with Bandwidth, and they have resolved the issue. They actually sent out a pretty long memo on it and talking about it and how they're looking for ways to prevent this in the future.
Awesome. Okay. No, it's great. Looking forward to digging into this more. Clearly, it's really needed. I'm curious to, as we get down to that process, sort of see what the longer term roadmap is in terms of needs from the IT and the growth of the infrastructure in the town. This makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Tom?
Thanks, Kathy. I don't have any questions now. Thanks for the presentation, Jay. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
All right, Adam.
Yeah, same. Nice to meet you, Jay. Thanks for the presentation. No questions at this time.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, that's advisory.
All right, thank you. Mr. Healy, questions, comments?
I am good. I've talked with both Mark and a while ago with Jay about this. Part of me worries a little bit about, particularly in the IT space, about there being too many cooks. And I think Jay's presentation, I don't doubt there are arguments that can be made for going in different directions or tweaking here and there. But I mean, we hired Jay for a reason. I think he's shown sound judgment up till now. I think there are strong underpinnings for his reasons for wanting to go the route he's laid out, and I'm in support of it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you, and thanks, Jay, for the update. I have confidence that Jay and the MTC are on top of this and doing the right thing, so I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dennington.
I don't have anything to add that has not already been said, but I'll just repeat what Marty said, that this is exactly why we hired you to analyze issues like this. And you have an expertise far above my ability to understand this at a technical level. So I think you've explained it pretty well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. I don't have any questions.
Great. Thank you. And again, I echo Jay, what Marty has said. We put you in this position for a specific reason, and I think your guidance has been sound, and the board supports you in your decision. So thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. That being said, next up, Article 10, the downtown district. So based on conversations that the board has had through public hearings and whatnot, I actually had put together, now the board hasn't seen this until tonight. I kind of put together just something on a scale I was hoping would provide a little bit of clarity to advisory members that, may not be quite up to speed on zoning. Zoning is just a tricky thing, and there's so many pieces to it. I'm going to have Ms. Malinowski share something that I put together. I'm going to ask, this is the first time members of my board have seen this as well. Obviously, as I go through each slide, members of the Board of Selectmen, please feel free to jump in and add anything that I may have missed or you think is important to be known as we go forward. So basically, the downtown district, this is an update to the current zoning. So actually, let me make this smaller and move this out of the way. So some of the major changes to the current zoning code, which are being proposed in the downtown district, is a minimum lot area updated to 5,000 square feet to bring non-conforming lots into conformity. It is currently 10,000. Another major change is, and has been spoken about through different reports, different public forums, is a mixed use development option. And I'll go through these further within the slides as well. A by right floor area ratio of 0.30 by right and up to 0.50 by special permit from the planning board. Updated uses by right and special permit. Updated from 2,000 square feet per building to 3,000 square feet per establishment by right. Prior, it was 2,000 square foot triggered a special permit. The current code does not have an allowance for green space. The downtown district requires 20%. The addition of affordable housing units in the mixed use triggered by a fourth unit by special permit at a rate of 12.5%. And also reduction in parking requirements for dwellings, bed and breakfast restaurants, as well as mixed use development. So before we move on, those are some of the highlights. I will ask any members of the board if there's anything further they would like to add to that. If not, Mr. Healy, are you hitting your button? Or are you good?
I'm moving my hand. I'm not hitting my button. So
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, that's fine. And also as we go forward, Ms. Malinowski, I don't know if you're moving people over. I know Ms. Luttrell is in the audience as we go along. If someone, and again, I'm putting her on the spot. She doesn't necessarily have to say anything unless she's asked a specific question. So
I'm going to go ahead and promote her.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I'll move to the next slide.
Great, thank you. So this is something that I had shown to the Board of Selectmen at our last meeting. And we put together an analysis of the current composition of the downtown district. As you can see, out of the 22 parcels, 11 of them are historic. There are 30 below the 0.30 FAR that's being proposed. There are 12 parcels as well. There's 4 parking lots and 4 vacant and 1 parking lot. So this kind of gives you an idea. And I know the point was made at our last meeting as well. If you look at some of the dates of the oldest, well, youngest, I guess I'll say, buildings downtown, it's been a long time since anything has happened in our downtown. I think we obviously need to be cognizant of the historical. Through the design guidelines process, the historical commission was involved. as well as you'll notice in the kind of an orange color, I listed 2 East Main Street. That has come up in a lot of conversations. There's been renderings of what could be and whatnot. So the last proposal that was before planning board for this was at a 0.328 FAR, which is a floor area ratio. And I'll get back a little bit more into that as we go further back. So those are just some of the highlights of the parcels and the historic nature of what our downtown is. If any members of the board want to jump in, please jump in. If not, next slide. So what does non-conforming mean? And that's one of the first pieces we talked about, is why we're changing it to 5,000 square feet. So a legally existing building, lot, or location does not conform to the zoning regulations in the district for what it's located. Chelsea, could you go back to the prior slide? And I don't mean to make you jump around, I'm sorry. If you look at this slide, currently it's 10,000 square feet. So there is parcel number 5447 in the column 2. You'll see that's at a 6,500. There is parcel, 54, 64, 65, 66. Those are all currently non-conforming lots. So what it does is it brings the majority of the lots into conformity, that there's opportunities there for potential development, revitalization, reuse, or adaptation. So, okay, Chelsea, you can go back to that slide. And the next. So mixed use development, the proposed definition. This definition actually comes from the current draft of the bylaw. And basically it's a development that includes a combination of permitted residential uses and one or more dwelling units within a single structure, provided that the inclusion of 2 or more dwellings in a mixed-use development shall not be deemed a multifamily dwelling. The ground floor facing the street shall be used only for permitted non-residential uses, and the residential dwellings cannot exceed 40% of the gross floor area of the above ground level floor space of the building. So basically what this is saying is what's currently proposed is that 40% of the building in a mixed use can be residential dwellings, and 60% would be non-residential. So currently our code does not allow for any residential units in a mixed use building. And also our current code does not allow for multifamily housing, except for elderly or in a major residential development. So this is giving opportunities for structured development in our downtown. And Marty, I don't know if you want to jump in. I actually have a slide at the end that kind of, I think, references your concern. So you can certainly jump in now, or you can jump in at the end.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Lisa, explain to advisory the overarching hope with this bylaw. What is it we hope this is going to, what are we trying to accomplish with this bylaw?
So I think that the goal, Kathy, is to revitalize the downtown, to give opportunities that are currently there, to be able to allow for diversity in housing, connectivity, just open the door to a more open downtown than what we have now. To allow, I know all through this process, there's been talk of, a mom and pop bakery or a microbrewery, or, just something on a small scale to be able to bring businesses downtown. And with the goal of doing this was also to allow some level of diversity in housing as we move forward as well.
So nothing's happened downtown in a long time, right?
Yeah.
Peter Beams's lot has sat vacant for a long time. So is the hope then that with these changes, you're going to have some developers, et cetera, that are going to have more incentive to basically do some things that will improve the downtown? Is that what this is trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and it's being done through, as we go through the slides, Kathy, you'll see it's being done in some different ways with by right uses that I touch on next as well, that gives it's almost a less restrictive a less restrictive way to go about a development as long as it falls within specific guidelines. And that's what by right means. And I have a slide on that as we go further back too. But basically by right means instead of going through the process, like now, for instance, if you wanted to bring a building or something to the downtown, a 2,000 square foot use would be the trigger for a special permit. Now it's 3,000 per establishment. So this gives additional incentives and opportunities. You know, we currently don't have mixed use in our downtown. We currently don't have apartments. You know, there's incentives in that. So the goal in this is to be able to give incentives to revitalizing downtown, to, you know, wanting people to come in and put something potentially in the downtown, or to even upgrade what's currently in the downtown to give opportunities to, again, for the housing piece, for, you know, additional businesses to come in as well.
And if no one does anything after this, if this passes in its current form and nothing happens, then do you go back and look at it again? Because it still didn't seem to do what we thought, or we hoped it was going to do.
I would hope that that's not going to be the case, Kathy. You know, I mean, there's been opportunities for development downtown, you know, through different processes. There were roadblocks, you know, the public was involved, but I think this does create opportunities and it gives options, you know, to developers and or people that currently own, you know, buildings within the downtown. It's all about giving options and opportunity.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. Next slide. So these are some of the by right uses I just mentioned. These are things that you'll be able to do without a special permit from the planning board. So uses in Res A and Res B, mixed use development, provided that the number of dwellings does not exceed 3. And the reason for that is the 4th unit triggers affordable housing. And there's a big process that goes through DHCD, and we would be putting that burden onto our building inspector to make sure that deed restrictions are done and communicating with DHCD through the process. Ms. Melanowski and I had the pleasure on an affordable unit here in town that we had just sold in the last couple months. And there are a lot of hoops that have to be gone through. And those hoops were gone through before it even got to us reselling the unit. It was done originally. And so that's the reason for 3. And that's by right. So, and then we talked about some of the uses over 3,000 square feet. So by right now, as long as it met other specific criteria, as far as it falls within the 0.30 FAR, any of these businesses or opportunities could come to any developer that would like to come to town. Currently, through the majority of these, a special permit is required. So that's the benefit of this, is not having to go through the special permit process. This is submitting plans to the building inspector, and as long as they fall within the criteria, the building inspector can issue the permit. And I think it's important to say also with these by right uses that these came about of EDC started this 2.5 years ago. And through the course of the last year, we have had multiple public forums. We had 2 rounds of public hearings as well through the planning board. And, you know, these came about, some of these through those discussions. We worked with a professional planner and, you know, planning board as well. I'll tell you, when we started this back in November, started really coming together as groups, trying to decide what it is we may or may not have wanted. I think it's important that everybody had a voice at the table, and all of us obviously were looking to do what was best for the town and potentially our downtown as well. So planning board did support these, and that's your biggest change. Realistically to the bylaw, there's 2 huge changes. It's allowing mixed use development and allowing by right. So those are big changes that's with no oversight of planning board. So, and to have planning board, you know, agree with these recommendations is in my mind, it's a very positive thing. So Next slide, Chelsea. And then we can come back and answer questions on all these too. So one of the things there's been a lot of talk about is what is a floor area ratio? And I know I refer to it as an FAR. And I think it's important that when people think about a building that goes in, the square footage of the building isn't 0.3 of what your FAR is. Your FAR has to do with the use of the building. And it's exclusive of stairs and stairwells, garages, basements, and storage areas. So when you say someone comes in with a building, say with a 6,500 floor area ratio, the size of the building has already taken out the stairwells, the basements, and the storage areas. So just to have an idea of what the FAR actually means. And I think we can go more into that on the next slide, Chelsea. So this basically, again, the FAR, floor area ratio, only governs the uses within the building. So this was a good example. I had found this was a parcel that it's been referenced, to East Main Street through the last couple of years. It's been in renderings, and it was proposed as a prior site. When this was originally submitted to the planning board, the FAR was at a 0.35, I think it was just over 0.35. But there's always guardrails within your zoning. And one of the guardrails obviously is you need X number of parking spots. So one of the things that happened with this site was they were looking for a waiver on the size of the parking. So what they ended up doing was they reduced the FAR to 0.328. The building size did not change from what was originally proposed. And what you'll see, I'll show some renderings of those buildings. It was only the uses within the building that changed. From the definition, again, being what's excluded, stairwells, elevators, garages, basements. So an FAR doesn't mean that the building can only be 0.30 of the lot. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes here too. Actually the building can be bigger, it can be smaller. It depends on how it meets the other requirements of the bylaw. So to put this in better perspective, Chelsea, can you go to the next slide? So here are 4 renderings that actually came from planning board on this particular building and how the size of the building didn't change, just the inside space. So this was what was originally planned, and it was just over 7,000 square feet. It shows the first floor plan. It shows the exterior of the building. And these slides were from the 6/19, June of 19 meeting. Okay, if you go to the next one. So again, this shows kind of what the thought process was on the second and third floor, and most of them were being used, most of the inside space. On September, of 19, when the parking became an issue, and to meet the point, to have the 0.328 FAR and have the required parking spots, you can see the building, the outside of the building didn't change all that much, but the size of the building didn't change either. So if you go to the next screen, on the third floor plan, you'll notice it says 560 square feet. The rest is marked as storage. So in thinking of an FAR, it's all about the use inside the building. Okay, Chelsea, can you go to the next slide?
So we added storage so it wouldn't count.
Yes, exactly. So that's how he got down to the required number of parking spots for the building. Yep. And again, I went and I did the math myself and I did the calculation. And one of the things that this bylaw also does is there's some lessening of restrictions on parking. Sorry, Chelsea, go back. So another big discussion item through the last year was the map. And there was concern, there were split lots within this map along Lattisquama, Park Street, and one on Boston Road. So the planning board had taken a lot of input on this. And one of the recommendations made was to leave the current split lots, as well as there is a CSX lot you can see in the bottom. Those were excluded. So those still have the exact same ability for development that they have today. We're just not including them in the downtown district. There was concern from neighbors of potentially, lumping all these lots together and what could go into a neighborhood. So the planning board took that into consideration. Again, there was a lot of discussion on this, and this is the map that planning board recommended. So So basically, and again, I'm happy to go back through all of this, but I just some closing thoughts is the ability for mixed use as a tool to revitalize our downtown will create new opportunities for business, diversity and housing, and a much needed change to a zoning code that has not seen any substantial updates in over 20 years. By right uses and the floor area ratio will allow for a less restrictive process, but still has guidelines put in place that the planning board has recommended, as well as the downtown district was drafted from input from public forums, public hearings in the spring and late summer, from the EDC, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, SHOPC, and assisted by consultants as well. There's been a lot of discussion over this over the course of the last 2 years. Next screen. In all fairness, where are we today? So the Economic Development Committee, which originally had spoken to Planning Board and where this had all originally came from, as of today, the EDC still has 3 specific concerns. Relative to these concerns, the Planning Board hearings are still open, and we're hopeful that through further discussions, when it gets to town meeting, we can say that the EDC, Board of Selectmen, and Planning Board are all on the same page. But some of the EDC's concerns, out of fairness, is they were concerned about the restriction of mixed use to require residential units in being in 40% of the building. They'd like to see a different number there. And again, and Mr. Healy, I know you may want to speak to this as well. That is one of their concerns. They were also concerned about the trigger. Originally, we had 8 units in a mixed use, and then it was changed to 3. They think that's overly restrictive. And again, one of the reasons Planning Board did it because of the trigger for the affordable unit. The third one was the reduction in the floor area ratio. We were at a 0.35 initially, and Planning Board recommended, and this board supported going down to a 0.30 by right. And that's specifically for by right. You can, anything over 0.30 up to 0.5 can be done by a special permit of the Planning Board. So I don't know if any members of the board want to add anything to that.
All 3 of these could be overridden by special permit.
So the 40%, no. And you know what? Is Mimi on here? I mean, I'll speak to these, Kathy, but I don't know if Mimi wants to as well. So the special permit is on number 2, would require a special permit over the 3 units. And for the floor area ratio, 0.3 is by right. Anything from 0.3 to 0.5, yes, would require a special permit as well. And next. Is that the, oh, Andrew, go ahead, just jump in.
Or just one thing I wanted to comment on the last point of these 3 points there. Commenting that the downtown business village district is currently 0.5 FAR for commercial buildings. And I have reviewed the bylaw and do not see it. There is not an FAR requirement in the current business village district.
Thank you, Andrew, for pointing that out. Yes, in 1993, when the business village district was enacted, there was no FAR. So there is currently no FAR in our downtown business and our business village district. Sorry. Thank you, Andrew. I meant to point that out. So I appreciate that. So is that the last slide, Chelsea? I think it is. Nope. Where we hope to be. So the planning board has one additional public hearing before town meeting, with all sides coming together one final time. The hope and the goal would be to once again collaborate and bring a fully supported article from the Board of Selectmen, EDC, and Planning Board forward. We hope advisory will be supportive as we continue to move forward and hopefully make some much needed changes to our downtown. So based on that, again, I don't know if any members of the Board of Selectmen, Kathy, before I go to advisory, want to add anything to what I've shown. Oh, did I lose everybody?
They all seem to be muted.
I don't know what happened.
Well, they're all muted.
You're loud and clear, Lisa.
Okay, I just can't see anybody. I don't know what happened. So
We can see you, Lisa. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see anybody.
They're
So
all mute. They're all muted. Sam's not anymore, but
Click on view in the top right corner.
Yeah.
they're all watching the baseball game, I think.
okay. So that being said, Chelsea, can you bring up the draft, well, the approved downtown district that shows the changes that were made at the last planning board meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know why I cannot see anything.
Do you want the red line?
Yes, please. Oh, there you are.
Can-
You're all
can you see
back. I can see it.
Can-
Thank you.
Can you see the red line?
I can.
Okay.
Yes. So Kathy, for purposes of discussion, this might be the easiest way to be able to answer some of the questions of planning board, of advisory, is, here specifically is the draft, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So however you would like to open it up to advisory, happy to answer any questions they may have.
Okay, so to advisory, I've talked today to 4 different people about this, including Ms. Braccio, and there still clearly is a lack of meeting of the minds, especially among EDC. I think I've been told, Mimi's here, she can tell us if I'm wrong about saying this. It looks like what we're seeing in front of us, the planning board is prepared to support, and I've heard unanimously. And obviously this is a BOS article, so I think that we've got maybe some agreement between BOS and planning board as far as article. And it looks like EDC is where the differences are. So I think Lisa agrees with that. They're meeting tonight. We know that. Not sure what they're actually going to do, but they are meeting tonight. So I know there is at least one person on advisory that has some major issues with this. So I want to turn it to Tim Martell. So Tim, why don't you talk about some of the issues that you see in the proposal?
You're starting with the negative guy, is what you're saying.
That's okay, Tim. All comments are appreciated.
Well, I will start. Thank you, Kathy. I will start by saying I am a big fan of the vision, and I am in complete agreement with it. I do think that the downtown needs to be revitalized. I love the work that's been done. And I think mixed use is the way to go. So hold on to that thought, okay? Because I do support that. I don't think that this bylaw is ready for prime time. There are some things in it, if you'd scroll, I don't know, do you want to get into specifics now, Lisa, or not? You just want to keep
I might be able to answer some of your questions now, or if Mimi's here, she may be able to as well, as to the reasoning behind some of them. I'd be happy to give it a good try.
All right, let's scroll down to section C. We can get right into the uses. Okay, here we go. And I'm gonna focus on the ones that I think are really problematic within the community. And the first one that really jumps out at me, it's glaring, is C7. That has nothing to do with mixed use. There is a large proportion of our community that's going to look at that as a backdoor for developers to put up high density housing. Given the backdrop of Park Central, I think that one line is going to cause outrage. And I think I would honestly, if I had one piece of advice to give you, we're going after a zoning change. Let's get laser focused on mixed use and mixed use only. That I would say is probably the stick of dynamite in this right now.
So Tim, if I can just add, so that was put in at the request of Shopsy.
I get it, but this is the thing that's absolutely going to sink the boat. People, I mean, this has nothing to do with mixed use. So
okay.
And Tim, if I could pile on that, well, why did we change it? It used to be multifamily by major residential development. Is there a reason why we took that language out and replace it with this? Could you still use that major residential development, characteristics or bylaw or whatever we want to call it, zoning?
So again, this was put in at the request of, Mimi, do you want to answer that question?
Because I believe today you could do multifamily downtown with special permit as part of a major residential development.
Correct, correct. That or elderly housing. Yes.
So I wasn't sure why that major residential development part fell off and what that really means, to be honest.
Well, the thought was that the chances of a major residential development being able to be accomplished downtown is slim to none. There are a lot of requirements in a major residential development, open space, affordability, that requires much more space than what's available in the downtown.
I think you need to ask yourself, would the community want some of the current houses to be bought out, knocked down so that we can put up a giant, not giant, but a 10-unit high density housing unit facility? And, in the current climate, the answer is going to be no. So I would really reconsider that.
So the multifamily dwellings are only by special permit.
That doesn't really mean much. Every year we have a new planning board. Every time there's an election, there's a new planning board. It only takes 3 people.
Right.
That's not a protection. And
Well, it's more of a protection than by right, because you do have public hearings where residents can come and make comments, whereas you bypass that with the by right.
True.
And there is discretion of the planning board in a special permit.
Bear in mind that the by right you're talking about is something that exists in the current bylaw today. So it's a done deal. People aren't up in arms about that.
I'm curious, just jumping in here, if we look at this with a goal of revitalizing downtown and bringing in that mixed use space, bringing in the well, I'll say it, the microbrewery or small restaurants or boutique shops in a better fashion, what's the carrot that the discussion has led to this being in there, right? How does this revitalize downtown versus just give a maybe slim chance, but a chance for a much larger multifamily 10-unit space?
The reason it's in here, as Lisa said, is Shopsy requested it be incorporated, so there's more diversity in housing, which has been a goal of several of our master plans and their housing plans for years.
Tim, what if this was 7? So, we've had a major residential development, which is 8 units. What if we capped it at 7? Nobody's wanted to do 8. I think 10 might trigger something, but 7?
I would suggest, perception is important, and this gives a bad perception to the community.
But again, Tim, today you could do 8 or more. So you could, if you had the land and you had a special permit approval, you could do 30.
I agree, which is why I suggest again that if you want to have a vision of mixed use, the bylaw change should be laser focused just on mixed use, and you eliminate all the controversial or potentially controversial elements so that you can get that 2/3 vote.
Tim, don't you also, we've talked a lot about diversity in housing and inclusiveness, and this is just another opportunity. And I think that's where Shopsy was going with trying. And again, if you look at the lot sizes downtown, and the guardrails that are put in place, I don't, as Mimi said, you would be hard pressed to do a major residential development with 8 units downtown. So again, I completely hear what you're saying, and I think that's something that, you know, we'll bring back to the planning board. But at the end of the day, the best way to revitalize your downtown is to be able to also have diversity in housing. You want people to be able to go to the businesses, and you want people to be able to have a place to that there may not be in Southborough now. That's all. It's just it's about adding another layer of affordability to young professionals, you know, maybe potentially.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I understand what you're saying. It's just hard to imagine that we need this downtown when we have Madison Place and very possibly Park Central. So this is just food for thought, right?
Nope, I agree. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. Another one go ahead.
So Tim, just before you go by this, I know Mr. Healy feels fairly strongly about diversity in housing as well. So Marty, do you want to add something to this before we move on? And if not, that's fine.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's interesting. I hadn't focused on the what is it? C7. C7. I mean, sort of interesting because if the likelihood is that it's never going to happen, why is it in there? I mean, it becomes completely superfluous. I mean, a very cynical view is that the reason it's in there is to pay lip service to the notion of thinking about diversity of housing, when in fact, with other provisions in the particularly the changes that have been made, you're basically putting in poison pills for diverse housing. I mean, that's my, you know, Lisa gave a very balanced, I think, summation of where things are, about, you know, how we got to where we are. The one disagreement I would have with it is that and Tim, you kind of touched on this, and that is that the laser focus, at least in my mind, of what is trying to be accomplished here is mixed use. And the changes that have been made by the planning board are classic examples of things that kill mixed use. I mean, I encourage you to I don't know what the EDC is going to do. I mean, that was one of their major you know, reasons for proposing this initially to the planning board. The planning board said to the EDC, go forth. The EDC went forth, came to the Board of Selectmen after they had done a ton of work, and we agreed to be the shepherding body for trying to get this to a special town meeting. I think I don't want to put words in the EDC's mouth, but I think that what drove them was the idea of mixed use. And I think they believe fervently, I certainly do, that mixed use has been undercut. And again, looking at that provision, Tim, that you've highlighted, you very cynically, you know, particularly when you hear that, well, that's never going to happen. If it's never going to happen, why is it in there? And if nobody thinks that it's a good idea for it to ever happen, why is it in there? I suggest that it's a sop to make it look like we're actually interested in diversity in housing, when with other provisions in the bylaw, we've killed it.
So Marty, I will just add to that a lot of the lots in the downtown, as you saw from the graphic I did initially, the spreadsheet, that's not to say this couldn't happen and you couldn't have fruitful multifamily housing on some of the lots downtown. I mean, some of the lots are conducive to a size to be able to do something like this. So I wouldn't say never. I think that there are opportunities on certain lots potentially for that to happen. So I will just add that. I will just add that. And again, this
comes up at town meeting, if this comes up, And, you know, you've got someone that brings it up that it lives in the Park Central area. This is going to be a long, long discussion because there's so much distrust of the town because of Park Central. So if this gets equated to Park Central as far as an analogy, then I think you may just risk the whole bylaw with it. So Marty, are you saying that you do support this, but that you believe the changes that have been made to garner the planning board support have hurt it? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, here's, I guess I won't try to say it, I'll say it. The number one, I support this going on the warrant. And I hope, but it's no sure thing. I hope that the EDC sticks to its guns and attempts to make an argument for going back to really what was agreed upon at the outset of this process. There was consensus to various provisions, and they were changed at literally the 11th hour. But let's assume that doesn't happen. Let's assume that you know, the EDC, feeling bruised and battered, you know, decides that they've done everything they can and they don't attempt to amend it. So then the question is, do I think that this article is worthy of support? And I do, one for a practical reason and one for an incredibly cynical reason. The practical reason is Lisa is absolutely right. There are a number of provisions in this proposed zoning law that I think are long overdue. I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it that there has been, that there really has been no planning and no proposals for addressing our downtown in decades. And so this is at least an attempt to do that. And there are some good provisions in there that I think are very helpful. So that's the very practical reason I think it's worthy of support. The incredibly cynical reason is a follow-up to a question you asked. And that is, I don't think this will do anything. I think that, again, that the changes made by the planning board are, whether intentional or not, the effect is to kill it as a mixed use zoning bylaw. And the very cynical reason for adopting it is we're going to know that. We're going to know if I hope that the planning board and the other members of the Board of Selectmen are right about this and I'm wrong, and that this will in fact generate development downtown. I think they're wrong, but we'll know it. Adopt it and we'll see that nothing happens. We still have, you know, a downtown that while other, you know, towns and smaller cities have been doing terrific things, ours is going to look exactly the same because of the 11th hour changes to the structure of the zoning bylaw. So practical reason and cynical reason for supporting it, notwithstanding the changes.
So I'm sure that members of the board want to speak. I just want to go to Mimi. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things. The 11th hour changes. Let's be clear, the planning board was in a hearing process. And in a hearing process, you hear input. And there's no point to having hearings if you go into the hearing process with a finalized bylaw of which you'll take no input and make no changes. So after hearing the input from many residents, many other boards and committees, we made some changes to the bylaw to address some of the input that we heard. The change to the mixed use, I don't believe that it kills the mixed use. It encourages more commercial rather than residential, which is why it was made.
Thank you, Mimi.
Yeah, Lisa, the thing I'll add is we're going to find that's my cynical reason for supporting it. We'll find out. And I hope, Mimi, you're right. I think you're wrong. But if you're right, terrific, then mission accomplished. If you're wrong, though, rather than having, what is it, a 3-year waiting period, we'll be able to go in and at least make a pitch for, all right, now we know what was attempted in 2021 was wrong. Now we can actually, do what was proposed by the various zoning experts and consultants on this, and take the tack that's been successful in other towns in revitalizing their downtowns.
And one other thing I'll add too is, I appreciated all of the time that the planning board put in to specifically, they could have just written a report of against this at town meeting, but they actually had a meeting, let us know where they stood. So Marty, whether you agree with it or we don't agree with it, I think we can agree that I appreciate the effort and the extra time that planning board put into this that wasn't required. So I think we can agree on that. Maybe.
Oh no, Lisa, I'm with you. I'm just saying the effect is, in my view, incredibly deleterious to what the object of this whole endeavor was.
Could we get back to Tim's questions?
Yes, but one more, let me add my cynic, which is different than Marty's cynic. We go to town meeting with this article, and let's say you've got Board of Selectmen saying, we recommend, we support, planning board supports, advisory has possibly a split vote, and EDC stands up and says, we want to amend those 3 things. And then planning board says, well, we don't support it anymore. I don't know what BOS says at that point. We're just going to have people in the audience turning and looking like, what on earth? I mean, zoning stuff is so hard to understand anyway. This is a long article. People tend to come to the meeting without reading this ahead of time. Some will read, but a lot of them won't. And so I don't know what we're accomplishing by going to the town meeting if we don't have full-throated support by EDC, planning board, BOS, and then hopefully advisory telling the town that, yeah, we support too.
Okay, Kathy, before, and Andrew, yes, we will move forward, but I'm sorry.
Then you go back to Tim, no, sorry.
Yeah, no, Tim, but I just want to see if there's any other members of the board that have anything to add to this specific question or comment. Go ahead, Andrew. Andrew, were you unmuted to speak?
Oh, okay. I don't know
Sorry.
which Andrew you're talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, AD. I should be like Kathy and say AD and AP. Go ahead.
So I just want to respond to the concern that Marty expressed. I mean, in the bottom line, I think he said, you support this article because it's long overdue to move forward on this, which I agree with. And just, a different way of saying, Marty, what you said there of how to answer Kathy's questions of what will be the impact of this, we really don't know. I think that some of the biggest changes that the planning board made at the last meeting they had, they really have to do with not so much has to do with the threshold between by right uses and what goes through a special permit process, right? The reduction of the number of 8 down to 3, I think that was a big one. So the fact that there's mixed use that would be allowed by special permit instead of by right, that doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. We don't know that. We just have to see how it plays out. And, Kathy, to your original question of, okay, is the idea that this is something which potentially you might enact and then build on later? I definitely think so. Because, none of us has a crystal ball. We can't see exactly whether it's going to attract the exact type of development that we're looking for. But I think that so much time has put into this process. It's been very delicate to try to build support from different groups. I definitely think we should keep moving forward with this. And I do think it makes sense to get something passed now that we can then build on later. We may have kind of an incremental approach here. And just a question, I don't know if it's for Lisa or Mimi. So the planning board has kept open its public hearing on this, right?
Yes.
When's the next date of your?
Mimi, it's the 18th, I believe.
18th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think maybe the concerns that you're expressing, Kathy, it might be useful for other members of the planning board to hear these as well at their next hearing.
All right, Andrew, is that all?
I think so. Thanks.
Okay, Sam?
Lisa, I had a quick comment also. I echo Andrew's comments. I think that probably fair to say that most of the people who've heard about this have things that they would like to tweak in terms of the language, myself included. But I agree with Andrew's comments that it's important to get something done here to create a foundation that, as various people have commented, we can come back later and make some changes if it doesn't work. I think for the selectmen, people vote for us and elect us to get things done, which hasn't happened in this case in the last several decades. So it seems to me it's worth making a concerted effort to get this established in a way that we have the opportunity later to modify if it doesn't turn out to do exactly what we want it to do. So again, I strongly support keeping this moving and getting something passed at town meeting that looks pretty much like this, and maybe we can tweak it a little bit in the next several weeks to generate some more support, which I think is certainly worth the effort. So I endorse keeping moving with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. And then Mr. Martell, we'll go back to you.
I have nothing new to add. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Martell, back to you.
Thank you. So that was the big one. Smaller items, C8.
Okay.
Somebody's going to stand up and ask, why do we want parking garages on Main Street or in this area? Why do we want a truck parking garage? Do we want trucks coming down 85, turning into this residential area at 2 a.m. and parking in a garage? It doesn't, this particular line doesn't seem like it belongs in this area of town.
That was an existing one, Tim. So
It is.
I
It's
agree
in
with
the
you, but it
code.
was in the existing one.
Yep,
Okay.
it's in the
So
current
just-
code.
Okay.
It was
And
there
then-
and you're just keeping it there.
Okay, and what about, D2 and D3? Are those existing as well?
Um,
Both
Yep.
of those are, yes.
All right, then I'll hold my comments on them.
I agree. I agree that Tim, some of them might not make sense and maybe we should take them out, but they were there for,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So my
So,
my,
Tim-
my
years,
comment
whatever.
on my comment on D3 is I don't understand why the mobile home isn't capped in terms of how long the ZBA can allow somebody to live in a mobile home.
So Tim, I can tell you when we had this discussion, back in November, when we had all come together, one of the big reasons for that was in the event if somebody has a fire, because there are some homes within the downtown, a lot of times, insurance companies will plop a, mobile home on the lot. And if you cap that and the work doesn't get done in time, then you have a family that could potentially have nowhere to go. And as well as, I think there was discussion about, potentially, if somebody's building a building downtown or redoing something downtown, they may want to have some type of small trailer for an office or whatnot. So I think that was the reason for that. But again, it's been in the code going way back.
Yeah,
I don't know if that helps you, but
It absolutely does. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
And
Much appreciated.
I'll stop there.
Nope. And Jim, we'll bring back your comment on C7 to the planning board on the 18th as well.
Is EDC going to the next hearing to make sure that their concerns are discussed?
I would hope so. They had sent a letter expressing their concerns at the last public hearing. I'm assuming they must not have had a quorum or something because they weren't able to attend. So I would sincerely hope that, they would attend and again, try to collaborate as we've done over the last 2 years and come to some agreement potentially. Anything else, Kathy, from advisory?
Okay, so we heard from Tim. AP, do you have anything else?
I do. First, I want to thank everybody for putting this together, right? There's many years of effort, master plan, Zach. I've been following this pretty closely and the work done here is phenomenal. I think we are 5 yards from the finish line here. I just don't want to trip over the line. There's a couple, I believe there's a consensus that could be made. I think there's a middle ground that we should be working towards. I don't think anyone should be digging in their heels at this point. some of my concerns is I do think that the 40% residential should be 50. I think, housing over commercial, 50% makes perfect sense, and that can be well explained to town meeting.
Andrew, can I just ask a question on that?
Sure.
So if it's a 3-story building, 50%, there would be a mixture of, even at a 50%, there'd be a mixture of commercial and residential.
Yeah, in a 3-story building, you'd have to have commercial on the second floor probably.
Correct.
As well.
Okay.
I'm just thinking 2-story or
Yep.
2.5-story with storage in the attic, right?
Yep. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yep. No, that's, a lot of the buildings down there are 2 stories. I think 2-story or 2.5 really makes more sense downtown. But I think 50% is a better number. I think that's more fair. And I believe more should be done by right. That's where you're really going to get the developers to be interested in. I worry, having it by special permit, where how some of our special permits in the past have gone, does not give people the confidence that they want to go through all this headache. The next one, I do think on A2, I think dwelling units should be 4. If not, I think 8 was too many. I think 3 is too, and I understand the concerns about affordable housing, but we want more affordable housing. It might be more headache for the building department or to do a lot of that, but to get an extra unit, I think it might be worth it. So I would go for 4, and it's up to the developer whether or not they want to go through with all that work on the deed restriction. I'll just kind of rapid fire off these if you want,
Nope,
Lisa. Or do
go
you want to
ahead.
tackle them one by
Nope,
one?
that's fine. Go ahead.
The next one, C2. I think that would just need to be 5 instead of 4. I do think a cap on that would be good, maybe up to 8, like a major residential development would be,
Okay.
or 7. Cap might be good on that. Tim brought up the multifamily one, but again, I think that maybe a cap on that or reducing it a little bit would make more sense. Floor area ratio, I do think 0.35 is a better number. I think the original scope of the 2 East Main Street from the June planning board meeting of 2 commercial, on the first floor that could be bakery, stores, whatever, and then housing above was a great, really what we want to have and revitalize our downtown. And this, as somebody that's been here a long time, that hasn't had a building built in my lifetime, and when I give tours of Southborough, I say, "Oh, this is our downtown. Don't blink, you'll miss it." I think we should really be trying to get more things in there. And by right, I think 0.35 is certainly fair. 0.30 is for Res B. So I think this is a denser area in which you're going to have some density. I think 0.35 is certainly a fair by right amount. And those are my only key ones.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Marcy?
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief. I have a few comments and questions. I think I'll start with, it's really hard, I think, for advisory to know what we're really discussing, considering the EDC is, in total pretty much disagreement at this point with what's being proposed as amended by the planning board. So that's one. It doesn't give me a lot of faith that we're looking at a finished product, or that it's, when the body tasked with bringing this as far as it came is now saying we don't agree with it now at all. I find that a hard sell to the voters. So I would just start with that. The other thing I would say is that I went back all the way back to, I think, the 2017 Urban Land Institute Forum and all the meetings since. And I did not hear at any time, including in the consultant's information, any specific data on what if, in terms of a cost benefit analysis, that we might get in the downtown in terms of development, and if it'll be worth the cost that this plan, or the one that's certainly proposed by the EDC, has the potential to cost the taxpayers and the town. As an example, the Weston Sampson study in July outlined a $4 million wastewater treatment facility that could possibly be required if any of these plans move forward. And so I guess my large question there is, and it was asked in the public hearings a few times, where's the data that shows that development of any of this is going to be worth the cost. I don't see the numbers anywhere. I mean, hypothetically, we all want some development downtown. I live in the downtown. I would love to see the downtown develop, but I don't see any data that tells me that the cost for infrastructure is going to be worth it. So that's one thing that I still don't see, and I think that's going to come up from taxpayers and voters. What are we going to pay for all of this? So that might, you guys probably don't have an answer to that, but I just think it's something that should be thought about in terms of when this goes to the town meeting. I have a feeling people are going to ask that, and particularly if we don't have a consensus between committees on the plan that's proposed. And my last question is, did anyone on EDC ever have any talks with actual developers about why the downtown's not developed as it is, and is this plan going to work?
Lisa, why don't you answer that in part with 2 Main Street as far as what happened there?
As far as, I don't know how 2 East Main Street really ties in, Kathy.
Well, it was, there was a plan, right, that got shut down.
So originally, the original plan went to, and Mimi, you might have a better history than me, had gone to ZBA for uses that weren't allowed in the downtown. That's where it started. And then when the plans came back to planning board, it was for the 619 and the 919 plans I showed you. That was strictly for office space because we didn't allow mixed use. So there was no ability to have apartments at that time in the downtown. So as to why planning board didn't support it specifically, I think that's Mimi, you might be better to answer that question. I mean, I'll attempt to, and if I'm wrong, you can jump in. When it was initially denied from planning board, it had to do with through the special permit process, and that there was concern from residents through the public hearing process regarding the size of the building. And it required a supermajority vote, and it was a 3-2 vote. So that's why the office building that was proposed that I showed pictures of was not done. Mimi, is that a good description of relatively what happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, apartments are not allowed use in the town currently. So that's why they didn't get the special permit for more than one use with apartments and office. And it came back to the planning board as strictly office. And it was voted down because it was too big and it didn't fit within the surrounding area.
Thank you for that. I have one more comment on the C7. I forgot to make it earlier, wasn't able to make it earlier. Just quickly, I completely agree with Tim Martell on this. I also agree with Mr. Healy if it's in there just for, to have it listed, but it's not really possible. Why is it there? I would just say that it's confusing at best, where it says multi-family dwelling up to 12 units, not to exceed 10 units.
That was a typo. Sorry, that's been fixed. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Perfect. And last thing I would say about that is that this could definitely come into play if you took into account, let's say, 11 Main Street. A redevelopment of that property could very well end up as a C7 here. So it is possible, even if you don't think about parcels that aren't developed yet. So I think that Tim is right. And there's also this perception from the public hearings and other forums that the EDC plan was a housing plan, not a business economic development plan, fortunately. So having this in there, I think definitely kind of makes people believe that that is the case. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Lisa, can I just try to address one of the questions that Ms. Jones raised?
Sure.
And that is the cost issue. I mean, this is a zoning, it's a zoning article, and it is, it's cost neutral. if right now, obviously there's not sewage in downtown Southborough, and a developer would either have to come up with a plan that doesn't need sewage, or doesn't need any change to sewage, or that that covers the cost. Now, could someone make a pitch to the Board of Selectmen, and after that to town meeting to do something from a sewage standpoint in downtown that would cost money? I mean, I suppose they could, but that'd be a decision that the Board of Selectmen would make and the town meeting would make. I mean, it wouldn't be in any way mandated or even suggested by this zoning article. So, I mean, the other part of the question, I guess, in terms of the cost benefit, or the benefit side of it, I mean, that's, I'm not sure, and maybe there are our consultant, I don't think that question specifically was put to her. I suspect her answer would have been somewhat similar to mine, and that is, you don't know. You don't know until you see if the changes you have made generate development. But any development is going to bring in taxes, and so there's going to be benefit in that respect. But I don't think, without a decision by the Board of Selectmen and then by town meeting, that there's a cost related to this at all. As I said, it's zoning. It's completely neutral in terms of requiring or even suggesting that the town has to spend a penny on any of this.
I think you're right, Marty. I agree with that as far as the answer to Marcy. I think that's a right answer.
I have a different perspective.
Go ahead, Tim.
And I agree with you about the zoning aspect and direct costs. I just assumed that Marcy was talking more economically about opportunity costs. What is, taking extreme examples either way, what's the impact to the town if every lot is now mixed use and is bringing in tax money without, say, any school kids? And then on the other hand, what's the economic cost to the town if every lot is now a 10-unit apartment complex and we have, I don't know how many school age kids coming in? So from that's how I took the concept of cost.
Thank you, Tim.
So I also would vote to take out 7. I think it's just going to cause trouble and doesn't add any benefit. As far as comforting Chopsy, that we certainly support diversity in this town as far as housing goes. It doesn't mean it's got to be there though. So we all support it, but it doesn't have to necessarily be here. With again the focus on what we're trying to do to revitalize Southborough. But I'm going to stay on the big picture again for a moment. John Wood said to me this morning that there are 3 disagreements, and Lisa spelled them out exactly right. So it does look like it's the 40% versus whatever, the 35 down to 30, and the 8 down to 3. So to me, the first 2 just sound totally arbitrary, especially going from 35 to 30. I don't know why the planning board would do that. I don't know why anybody thinks they've got an idea of what 35 is versus 30. It just sounds too close to me. So to me, that should have been done. It's just too close, and those are just arbitrary numbers. The 40. So what was the 40 before? Nothing. There was nothing. There was no number in there at all, and 40 got added, or was there a number there with EDC?
Well, it was a weird one, Lisa, right? It was like 90.
80.
It was
Well,
it was a minimum of 10% commercial.
Right.
So there's 10, and then basically
10% commercial, Kathy. So 90% residential to 40% residential, right?
Yep. So that's substantial. That's meaningful. So now, but that was.
You're breaking up a little, Kathy. I think we might have lost Kathy.
Is she still there?
I think she's frozen.
She's frozen. All right, Andrew. Well, you as the right hand can continue going through your members if you'd like until she comes back.
As unofficial vice chair. Why don't I go, Eric?
Thanks, Andrew. I'll try to be brief because I know this is a really important issue that has taken up a lot of time over the years, and I want to echo a lot of things that Andrew said. One, the appreciation for all the effort that's been put in on all parties. I do share similar concerns. C7 I see as just a lightning rod, as perhaps Tim said. That is a real challenge here, and I also, look to Andrew's comments around C2, forgive me, increasing, sorry, not under C2, increasing the number of potential to 4, even if that would trigger affordable housing, it doesn't mean you have to go to 4. So forgive me, A2. Yeah. And I wonder if adjustments to A2 and then to C2 could be a consideration. Again, agreeing that I think affordable housing and diversity is very important to the town, but is that the key to the revitalization of downtown and key to bringing in those businesses that I think there is consensus around wanting? Similarly, I think that the by right could be a little broader. Now, perhaps this is me being 36 and having a couple kids and loving what I see in Hudson and other places, but the microbrewery, for example, we can have restaurants that could go to appropriately get a liquor permit, but a microbrewery is called out separately. And I don't know all the discussion around there. I would love to be educated on it if appropriate. But I do see that as being narrow. And a bit of a question as well as a comment is, I know from some of the previous meetings between the EDC and the BOS and the planning board as well, this question about the FAR dropping to 0.3. It forgive me, but for what I saw in the comments, when it was dropped to 0.3, it didn't feel like it was fully fleshed out. It felt like a couple people said, let's drop it to 0.3, and that was agreed upon in the effort of making concessions and moving forward. I preferred the 0.35, but I also know that there were previous versions that showed higher numbers as a whole, something that hasn't been talked about. I'm not sure if the EDC has capitulated or put this to bed, but I believe one of the concessions that was made was not just dropping the FAR from 0.35 by right to 0.3, but also the 0.5 by special permit, I believe, was higher previously as well. So again, I think that flexibility here is important, and I agree with Andrew's comments, AP's comments about this being, not our standard residential plan and not like the rest of the town, and wanting to encourage folks to come in. So I'll try to wrap it up there. Again, I would be curious to better understand why something like a microbrewery needed to be called out separately from a restaurant. And again, similarly curious if the EDC has fully put to bed their concerns over not just the 0.3, but also the 0.5 by special permit. As much as everybody, I want to see something get done here, but I'm not sure further, driving further polarization on this issue now versus potentially taking the time to hammer out some of these final details to have real true consensus among all of the people who have appropriate input in all the various boards, gets us across that, gets us to that goal. So those are some of my comments and thoughts here.
All right, thank you, Eric. I will just add one thing, if I may, that the last position that was taken by the EDC was 0.35, and they up to 0.5 by special permit. That was a vote that was taken before it was given to planning board to start the public hearings. So I would just add that piece. As far as the microbrewery goes, that's been tossed around, and I honestly, I specifically can't answer that question. I could certainly get an answer for you. Oh, Mimi can. Here we go. Mimi can answer that one.
I think that's by special permit because of the amount of water that's needed for a microbrewery, and there are major stormwater issues downtown and wastewater issues.
Thank you.
Andrew, Kathy sent a note under chat. I don't know what that means, but okay. Do you want to move on to your next member, Andrew, while you?
Yep. So Kathy, are you back?
I can hear you guys fine. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now, Kathy. Go ahead. You were
Okay,
froze
so
up.
let me get this in while I can. Okay. Advisory's role is not to change this article. We cannot support it. That's how we change it. But we need to address what is printed here and not necessarily start talking about the details. As Marty said a minute ago, way too many cooks in the kitchen now. So we just need to look at what's in front of us. This is printed. About to go to the printer like it is. This is what they're going to see. And you start making tons of amendments, it's just going to be totally confusing. So I still think the right tact is to hope that EDC and planning board get together on Monday and they compromise on the three things they seem to, that EDC seems to have an issue with. So EDC will support this at town meeting, and we have all support with maybe the exception of getting rid of that C7 at some point.
Kathy, I agree and disagree. We have certainly discussed after a warrant has been finalized what an amendment on town floor should look like. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here. There's still, the public hearing is still open. The planning board still has an opportunity to revote. So does Board of Selectmen, so does EDC. And if
we still have to either recommend, we still have to support or not support what is written.
And I think what I'm saying here and what other members of advisory are saying is I do not support it in the current form. I don't support sending it. I would rather not send anything than to send this. And I would rather see it amended to be more even, come a little bit more of a consensus and pass something, to Marty's point, that probably has a better chance of developers actually looking. I don't want to wait another 3 years to see nothing happen in downtown. I've been here too long with nothing that's happened. Let's put something together that really will foster some development in downtown. We'll bring in some business and we'll revitalize this town, because our downtown has had nothing since I moved here in the 80s.
Okay, but just to be clear, Lisa, this is a done deal as far as what's going in the warrant, right? What we're looking at tonight. There's no chance of changing this at this point.
It was, nope, warrants closed and signed.
But, this is Marty. Andrew's point is a good one. It doesn't, I can't remember who said it, but that most people are not going to have looked at this until they get to town meeting. So if they look at an amended version or if they look at this version, I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. I think the more important thing is if everyone agrees. And I agree. There is, going back up to 3.5, which I think is a baby step. If that and going from 0.4 to 0.5 gets the agreement of the EDC, and it sounds like it might get the agreement of a sufficient number, maybe everybody on advisory, my goodness, those seem like baby steps, and they are not inconsistent. I would go so far as to say they are consistent with the overall intent from the beginning of this enterprise. So I guess that's my way of saying to the planning board out there, think hard about revisiting those numbers.
So I'm of a little different mindset. I think too many amendments on town meeting floor confuses the voter, and someone is going to stand up and indefinitely postpone. And you have to keep in mind at this town meeting as well, there is no visual capabilities. You can't put something up on the screen and explain to people. People are going to be looking what's in their hand at town meeting. So I'm of a little different mindset. I think, again, I think too many amendments on town meeting floor are going to sink this. It's going to completely sink it. Again, just I respectfully, I respect what you say, Marty. Again, I'm just of a different mindset, and I think it creates a whole lot more confusion. And as you know, I kind of have to laugh though. This board supported the decisions that planning board made. So to sit here and tell planning board to potentially, come back to the table, then this board shouldn't have potentially supported what's on the table. So
Well, you're talking to somebody who didn't. So remember, I supported. Lisa, again, I think I don't disagree with you that having a complex set of amendments, is going to overwhelm everybody. It's going to overwhelm me. But what has been talked about are a couple of numbers. I just don't see how that is going to overwhelm people. But again, that's got to. In other words, if I think it is much more important to have everybody on the same page and saying, yes, we, committee A, committee B, board C, board D, all think this is a good idea. That is much more important than saying we're not going to do any amendments because you might get confused by it.
And I'm not saying that either, Marty. All along, we've all worked very hard and pushed to collaboratively work together. So I'm not saying that at all. I just, in trying to be fair, I mean, we have a member of planning board sitting here too, and Mimi, I appreciate you coming, but at the same time, I think we bear some burden for what we've put forward as well. And I know that you didn't 100% support it, but it was still supported by this board to put in the warrant. So that's my only point that I'm making.
But
yes,
listen to what he's saying. I think there's going to be amendments no matter what. So if we could go with everybody agreeing with amendments agreed to up front and just say, okay, we amend it right up front from boom, boom, but we all agree, instead of not agreeing and then the amendments start flying and then all the discussion and then you're arguing back and forth. I still think Marty's way is much cleaner. I think you have to assume there's going to be amendments if we don't do something.
But I'm not saying that, Kathy. I'm
so
saying
with everybody agreeing on what those amendments are.
Okay.
Assuming it's too late to change it.
I'm not saying we just need to keep the amendments on a simple enough level. But again, until the 18th, until EDC goes before the planning board and the board of selectmen go to those meetings, we don't even know what the amendments may or may not be. We don't know. And we're talking about all coming together. It still may not happen. That's my concern. And I worry that it might be a lost opportunity. That's all. So Sam, go ahead.
Quick comment, following on Marty's comment. I agree that it is a challenge at a town meeting that you don't have visual aids to help people. But I think that the points that we're talking about here are relatively small in number. And one could, presuming hypothetically that there is a change to the few points that have been raised this evening here, one could go to town meeting with a handout that has a markup version of this that my count is fewer than a half a dozen things in here that could be changed potentially to get us closer to alignment between the various boards. And I don't think that's a steep hill to climb to say, point out these 6 wording changes here, if what we're talking about, we'll do amendments to affect these changes. And that should be something that's, I think, fairly easy for people to understand in terms of the things that are being changed. So I don't think that's an insurmountable hurdle if folks do move their positions a little bit and move closer to agreement on these open issues that we're talking about.
And I agree, Sam. I hope that's where we end up. Andrew.
I was just thinking of an illustration of how a series of agreed upon amendments in advance of town meeting worked for a zoning article was the last town meeting in the outdoor illumination bylaw, which was the version that ultimately passed was not the one that was printed in the warrant because there were amendments that were worked out between the Board of Selectmen and the planning board. So again, I'm in the same position I was before. I'll support this if it's not amended. I'll support it if it is amended in a way that brings people closer together. I just want to come back to the C7 comment briefly. Some of the concerns that expressed were more expressed as, well, there might be a negative reaction from, the voters and taxpayers, but just on the merits, I think there is a case to be made to keeping C7. One, because I don't believe that allowing a building like that by special permit necessarily means that, you know, a whole series of them get built, because I think that the special permit criteria is broad enough that the planning board can take into consideration the negative effect of having one building like that right next to another building like that. And also, you know, I thought, Marty, you were going to make this point earlier about the comment that you made at our last meeting 2 nights ago about talking the talk and walking the walk in terms of diversity of housing. There's certainly a good case to be made in terms of, yes, there is a place in our downtown for multifamily dwellings, and that they shouldn't all be concentrated on Route 9. I don't know if I'm actually maybe in the minority in holding that position. So certainly my heels aren't dug in on that, but I felt that it was important enough that I at least speak my mind about that. Thanks.
Thank
You
you,
know,
Andrew.
just if Lisa, if I could just,
Sure.
I'm not going to make that point, Andrew. I've made it too many times already, but I agree with it.
Well, you made it
What I
last
will-
night, but this group didn't hear it. The same.
Okay,
We've spent a lot of time together now, but so you're thinking that everyone's heard when you said 2 nights ago.
I do agree that we need to walk the walk. But the interesting thing is, I mean, I live downtown. I think I live closer than anybody on any of these boards. The interesting thing, talking about the density, and like, there are apartment buildings all over downtown. You know, within, I can think of probably 8 or 10 multiple unit dwellings within 2 blocks of downtown, and I can think of at least 3 with more than a couple of units in those. So we've already got density down there. I mean, it's just, it's odd to be saying, boy, do we want this down there? We've got it. And any study that anybody with urban or town planning is doing right now talks about exactly the sort of mixed use with commercial on floor 1 and residential on floor 2. And that's where I thought we were heading with this whole thing. And that's why Andrew Pfaff, all sorts of likes or whatever you do with those things. I mean, I think you're right on in terms of the arguments you've made or the points you've made about that.
Yeah, but just to that point, Andrew, where you're saying I don't support this, you know, in its current form, you know, I just have to be very careful here about, because if you really want to start some positive momentum to start to see changes in the area, you know, I'm concerned that, you know, a negative, if this doesn't pass, then it has to wait, at least 2 years, and then you get back to, okay, if people think if you make the it's not perfect enough for you to support, so you don't support it, is the idea that all this work, which has taken 2 years, could be recreated 3 years from now. I don't know. So, you know, I think Sam has expressed this too, that we should get something done. There's been so much work put onto this. There's a delicate balance, and that's why I still support it.
Lisa?
Go ahead, Sam.
Quick correction. I think the planning board actually has the right to bring something back to town meeting sooner than
You're right.
years or whatever
With a positive vote.
I think it's a super majority vote, but they do have that option, not guaranteed certainly, but we're not locked into waiting a couple of years or so.
Yeah, I think, Andrew, my thing was if maybe more like pulled the article kind of a thing, like we didn't actually vote on it. But, you know, I think what
this is the whole anchor of the special town meeting.
Exactly. But I mean, my concern is if we don't get EDC on board, or it sounds like maybe advisory on board, there's going to be amendments to it. It's going to get messy. If we can all get into consensus, if it's literally 3 changes, then the amendments are 0.3, 0.35, 40% to 50%, and from 3 to 4 residential units. That's a very easy amendment to make. People can understand that. If we all agree, if that's the little bit of movement it takes to get EDC back to the table and get advisory supporting, Board of Selectmen supporting, planning board supporting, to go into town meeting with those 3 small changes with everybody in favor, let's shoot for that. Right? If that doesn't move the needle with them, then that's a different story. But I think I think we moved the pendulum. Let's shift it back a little bit, come to some consensus, bring them back to the table so that this doesn't be, a contentious town meeting. And I think we'll get this done. I think we're so close. Let's not trip over the finish line. And if those 3 minor edits really are minor, move the needle, which sounds like what they're looking for, I think we should do it.
So in terms of mechanics, then, if I wrote down, Mimi said the next planning board meeting is the 18th.
Yep.
So then I also see, is that also a board of selectmen meeting, the 18th?
No, I think we're the 19th. I think it's wrong at the bottom of the agenda. Mark, is that
Okay,
correct?
good. All right.
Yeah.
No, it is the 19th. That is.
It's a Monday. 18th is a Monday.
Yep. I noticed that earlier today.
That would
Andrew.
be the day that what you're talking about. There's not, I know deadlines get deals done. That's the date when it would need to get done, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, you're really pushing the envelope at that point. Yeah. So, okay. That's it. Anything else from advisory?
Isn't that enough?
It's never enough, Kathy. I am always happy to hear what advisory has to say. Come on.
No, it's vice versa.
Again, that was the point of all of these discussions and the public hearings and everything that's gone on for the last 2 years, Kathy. It's about hearing what people think and, doing what we think is best ultimately. So I think I speak for the board when I say I appreciate the discussions tonight. I think they were worthwhile and I think, they were fruitful and, we'll see where things go on the 18th. And, again, hopefully we can all come together. And if not, yes, Andrew.
I have something to say that doesn't have to do with the downtown. Is that okay?
It depends. Are we going to get in trouble?
Did we skip Article 1, the SAP?
Yes.
Because Betsy wasn't here.
Betsy wasn't here.
Article 1, we don't have, Article 1 is very straightforward. We know
It
why
is.
it's there.
Okay.
So we don't,
Yeah.
that's easy to explain to advisory next week. So I'm not worried about 1 at all.
Yeah, no, it's all got to do with the IT, basically the IT position. So, all right. So that being said on that, Kathy, why don't we do a joint? I'm going to move our public comment up to match your public comment. We'll do a joint public comment. Oh, Chelsea, did you have something you wanted to add? Sorry. No. Okay. If anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. All right. So Kathy, I guess that leaves you your adjournment.
So it is 9:27. So could I have a motion from Andrew Pfaff to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at 10:27.
Okay, could I have a second from another advisory member?
Second.
Okay,
Seconded by Tim.
Okay, second by Tim. Okay, so roll call vote. AP.
Aye.
Cook is aye. Marcy.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Tom. So Tom, you're muted, but we've got 6 votes, so we're fine. So 601. Okay, advisory is saying good night to everybody. We will be in touch.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
good night, advisory. Board of
Thank you. Let's
Selectmen
do this
is.
with you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
Thank you all
you.
for attending. Much appreciated.
Thank you for your input, advisory. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for
Thank you, Mimi, too.
being available as always. Much appreciated. All right. That being said, we can take positions on individual warrant articles for what we can at this time. That'll be printed within the warrant. As I said at our last meeting, the goal is to actually put the votes, whether it's a 5-0, a 4-1, a 3-2, whatever, within the warrant as well. So I know Ms. Rosenblum didn't really present the personnel bylaw. I don't know if the board, it's pretty straightforward. It has to do mainly with the IT position. Is the board comfortable with taking a position on that tonight?
That's the only change that was made, right?
Pretty much, Andrew. Yep, pretty much. It was. So that being said, let's take a roll call. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I don't know if you wanted a motion or.
Yes.
I move that the Board of Selectmen support at town meeting Article 1.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio, aye. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, Article 2, amend the town bylaw select board. Are we in a position to? Marty's smiling.
I want to hear Marty's speech again.
Marty, you have the floor.
I almost had it
No,
memorized.
I'm not.
I need a couple more times.
All right, Mr. Dennington, you're so good with making the motions.
Go for it.
Yep.
Okay, I move that the Board of Selectmen support at town meeting Article 2.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy. Oh, he's deep in thought.
As long as there's an
Just say no.
emoji with, as long as there is an emoji with an unsmiling face, it's an aye.
All right, Ms. Braccio, aye. You know, Marty, you can actually present that one if you want.
That's right.
I couldn't without lapsing into my speech.
All right, thank you.
I tried to summarize it for you tonight so that you wouldn't have to. But
Marty, I don't know if you were at the meeting before where the first draft of it had select board as one word. And that's one thing that really, there is one town in Massachusetts that makes it, and that really, so at least we did not do that, okay?
That was the big thing for Andrew. So he's affected the future here.
All right, on to Article 3, the amend the fiscal year 22 budget. Andrew, do you want to just continue? You're on a roll. We can toss this one to Mr. Stivers.
You know, here's just the that is of the discussion that we had, and you know, that's the one that the Board of Health aspect of, that's the one that has the most impact on the tax base going forward permanently, basically.
Correct. I mean, if the board isn't comfortable taking a position tonight, we can just do it at town meeting.
I would actually like some more time to think about it.
All right, Mr. Stivers, your thoughts?
I support it. I don't need more time, but if Andrew wants more time, I don't object to at town meeting.
Marty, I feel like I should go upside down to.
No, my iPad is at 3%, so I had to plug it in, and I'm leaning against the wall. So
that looked very acrobatic from this side.
I don't know if you were on a boat there or something.
I know. I was like,
I know. So, what was the question?
So Andrew's looking for some more time before we take a position on fiscal year on Article 3. If we do that, it'll just say at town meeting.
That's fine.
Okay.
And can I just, I'm going to abstain anyways, but just one clarification on something Andrew said. So I think permanent is, it's not technically permanent.
Yes.
So
but I think you get where I'm going with it, right?
I do, but the contracts are through June. So that's what
I get that.
Okay. So
you're saying we would be, but were the contracts contingent on town funding?
Yes.
So again, I just want a little more time to think about it.
I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure it's clear that, like, you know, there aren't these are not multi-year contracts. Like, it's not like a union contract. They're not SAP positions. I just don't want it to, it's not permanent funding per se, right? And I think, you know, once we have Dr. Fazen's public forum and, you know, we now have a new member, you know, it's a 3-person board. So
yep.
That's kind of the next step, is to talk about what does the future of the department look like. So
yeah,
okay.
So and if I can just ask a follow-up question. Okay, so the public health director's contract originally, right, came last year during COVID, there was kind of a shortage crisis,
Yeah.
and Board of Health just did it, right? So now, but do you envision that?
They did it. So yeah, through June 30th.
So then going forward, do you think that the public health director position would it be part of now I'd have to go back and look, is it in the SAP right now? Or is it a position where like we would be negotiating a contract with the public health director, kind of like the same way you for DPW director and town administrator?
Yeah, I
Like
can't
that?
answer that
Okay.
yet,
Could be.
but I think that there's options.
Yeah. My question is just about, is there a regionalization component to that too? I don't know. And I'm always hesitant.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think so the plan is that we're going to do our draft on Tuesday, have Dr. Faison come in, do his whole public forum. And it talks a significant amount about regionalization. And so then I think the Board of Health needs to decide to what level and what time frame. So those are the open-ended questions as of right now.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so we'll do that one at town meeting then. Next up is the capital budget. Are we ready to move forward with that? All right, Mr. Stivers, we'll pick on you to make the motion this time.
This is Article 4.
Correct.
I-
Thank you,
I
Sam.
move that we support Article 4 at town meeting.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Malinowski. Roll call. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mrs. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you very much. Article 5, Mr. Stivers, once again, I'm assuming we're going to support this.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
I
Go
move
ahead,
we
Sam.
support Article 5 at town meeting.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you very much. Article 6, advisory membership.
I move that we support Article 6 at town meeting.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you very much. Article 7. Do you want to keep going, Sam, or do you want to?
I'll go. I
Go,
move
go.
that we support Article 7 at town meeting.
Great. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Continue, Sam.
I move that we support Article 8 at town meeting.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you.
I move that we support Article 9 at town meeting.
Second.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Article 10.
I move that we support a town meeting Article 10.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dennington.
Can I just, can
Yeah,
I,
go ahead,
before
Marty.
we just,
Sure.
again, if we have a roll call vote, I'm going to vote yes. And I don't know, is there a cynical emoji you can put next to that? But
Well, I
but-
think Marty, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, with what we heard from advisory tonight, with the hearing open till the 18th, I guess I'd be more comfortable. I understand it's not going to make it into the, the vote is not going to make it into the warrant, but I'd be more comfortable waiting to see what happens on the 18th.
But the question right now is, when the printed warrant, is it going to say Board of Selectmen support or at town meeting, right?
Right.
Now,
Support it.
no, Marty's saying to wait, Andrew. So it
To
would
say at
say,
town meeting.
At town meeting, yeah.
I think it's if we can't support the article we're bringing forward,
Yeah.
yeah, then why are we bringing it forward? I think it gives and I understand the amendments that could possibly be coming to bring support, but I think it is a typical voter that shows up at town meeting and sees a Board of Selectmen article and you can't support it. I think it gives
That's
not
fine.
a good message. But no,
Again, if
it's
that's,
whatever the board wants to do, Marty. I'm concerned
no,
about
it
that.
just seems like what the board wants to do is take a vote, and that's fine. I'm not gonna belabor the point. I just think that, not surprisingly, there remain moving parts here.
I agree.
And so
Well, I agree, and that was part of the value of the discussion. Is it kind of is a little bit of practice for town
And we
meeting.
did,
You're gonna-
and
you
we did
said
vote
this-
to support this previously.
Pardon me?
We did vote to support this previously when we sent it to the planning board.
Yes, and I think there's a motion that has been seconded too, right?
There is. There is. So discussion, any further discussion? All right, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
cynical
Mad-
emoji.
mad
Aye.
face emoji, and
No,
Braccio,
cynical,
aye.
cynical. Nothing mad, not mad, cynical. So,
Aye. And Marty, depending on where we go, I mean, I think it's important then when we do put something out, that it's realistic of the process and where we ended up. And I think that was why it was important at the end of the one of the last slides I put was that EDC didn't support it, because I think that's important. So, depending on where we go at town meeting, we can certainly have something, that we put in our information packet. I think that's the perfect time to express your reservations. I think the public
Well,
has a right to know that you're not.
cautiously,
Yeah.
cautiously optimistic that a united front is going to be forged after October 18th.
Yeah,
So
me too. Fingers crossed. Always fingers crossed. Okay, that being said, we took up the fire chief. So last matter we have is appointment of special counsel for tax title. Mr. Purple.
Madam Chair, I forwarded the board a memo earlier that I received today from town council regarding the appointment of Dave Condon and his firm. For Mr. Healy's benefit, the firm is located in Boston.
Okay.
Because he asked me that question earlier when he stopped in today, and I was in the middle of something, and he stumped me. I have worked with or used Mr. Condon in the past, at least the treasurer's office, the towns I've been in has used them. Jay in his memo indicated he's worked with them in the past, and I'm very comfortable with him. He's recommending that he be appointed as special counsel for tax title purposes for the town.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? We'll go around the table again. We'll start with Ms. Balanowski this time. Any
I'm good with
questions,
that.
comments? Okay, Mr.
Thank you.
Stivers.
Now, I looked at their website. They seem to be certainly capable people,
Yeah.
so.
I agree. Mr. Healy.
yeah, Boston, easier for me to pester them if necessary. So
Mr. Dennington.
Do we know what their rates are, or I know there's a
I have the proposal. I don't have the proposal at my fingertips. I will say, and Mr. Stivers had asked the question before, which may or may not answer your question. The answer may not. But the cost of the services are paid for out of special legal, but then through the legal proceedings, most of the costs, if not all the costs, are recovered. Ends up going back into the fund as it goes back into the general fund as miscellaneous revenue closes out to free cash at the end of the year and circles back to the town in the coming fiscal year. So it's a little bit of a push, but I can get that rate for you and send that out so you have that information.
Okay, thank you.
What I asked was if this was included in the Tallerman flat fee thing. I guess I'm a little disappointed that capability wasn't as part of Mead Costa Tallerman and in the flat fee, but I don't think it's a huge amount of money. And as Mark points out, you may get recovery there. So.
Okay. That being said, do we have a motion for the appointment of special counsel for tax title?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
No emoji. Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye. That being said, Mr. Stivers, the last item on the agenda.
Adjournment.
Yes, do we have a motion?
I so move.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Emoji. Big smile.
Happy,
Aye.
happy
a
emoji.
heart this time. All right, and Ms. Brascio, aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care.